decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and preliminary subdivision plats. Commission's decision to approve or deny a site plan or preliminary subdivision plat is a final decision by the city unless the applicant appeals to the City Council. You'll need to contact the City Clerk or Community Development Department staff for details on those council hearings. This evening, the applicant will be given 10 minutes to present their request after presentation by staff. Proponents and then opponents from the public are allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant then will be allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed, and after motion, the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the issue under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation of the staff report unless an individual present or the member of the Commission requests the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. To better serve you when possible, please notify us at least 3 business days in advance at area code 515-283-4209 should special accommodations be required. Assistive listening devices are available for meetings in the council chambers. Planning and Zoning Commission meetings are also broadcast on Mediacom Cable Channel 7 for customers of that service. The broadcast is also streamed live in real time on the City of Des Moines website at www.dmgov.org. You need to click the Watch Live link. Quorum being present. Motion to approve the minutes. All right, Will. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign.
I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining? Okay. We have one consent item. Is there other consent items that we want? Ed?
7 and 9.
7 and 9. Is there anyone here to speak on either 7 or 9? Let me go over 7 real quick. It's a request from Jake Christensen to rezone property located at 600 East 5th Street. The subject property is located at LBA 60 Inc. And number 9 is a request from Thoreau Center LLC represented by Scott Hartsook for review and approval of a site plan under design guidelines by the MPC districts on property located at 3500 Kingman Boulevard to allow site modifications related to an assembly use of the property. Is there anyone here in the audience that speak in opposition to that item? In opposition to either one of those items, 7 or 9? Does anybody here question whether or not they're here on 7 or 9? Okay, seeing that.
I'm the applicant.
You're the applicant, but you're not obviously not in opposition, right? Okay. Do you have any concerns about the staff recommendation? No. All right. Any member of the commission in opposition to those? Ted's moved it. All those in favor of moving 7 and 9 to consent, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Okay, it's moved. Passes. Okay, so we'll be taking up. Okay, we're going to take up 1, 7, and 9. And the motion's been to move consent. Let me read number 1 so everybody understands. Request from Jake Christensen with regard to the following items for property located at 425 East Grand Avenue for certificate of appropriateness to relocate Norton Hall from 709 East Locust to 425 East Grand Avenue. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to that item? In opposition in the audience? Seeing none?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment on that, please.
Go ahead.
In the packet number 2 under general information, I'd like to insert a sentence at the end of the paragraph that begins, Norton Hall was designated as a landmark by the City Council on April 17, 2000. The original nomination form states the building predates the State Capitol Building 1884-1886, and that it was home to 3 early Scandinavian groups, the Danish Brotherhood, the Danish Sisterhood, and the Northern Singing Society. I'd like to add the sentence, the current nomination corrects this date of construction by dating it to 1894.
Is there any opposition, Greg? Friendly amendment? Okay. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving the three items to consent, the consent items, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Passes. Okay. Moving on to item number 2.
Mr. Chair, there's an item number 10.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Staff is recommending continuation, and I believe that the applicant has in an agreement with that, if that could be taken up.
Is the applicant present on item number 10? Applicant on item number 10. Let me read what item number 10 is. It's a request from 7 of 7 LLC, represented by Dan Norris, for review and approval of a site plan. Anyone here on that item? But the request is for continuance. Eric?
Mr. Chair,
Request is for continuance on 10?
Yes,
To what date?
we would just move that to the September 5th.
Okay, September 5.
Basically, we've asked for additional information on the architectures.
All right, is there a motion on that? Shirley? Got it, Kathy? I'm moving fast, I'm sorry. You all right? All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of continuing to September 5, item number 10, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation again, Kathy. Okay. Anything else, Eric, that we should take up? I'm sorry, I should have asked you before. Item number 2 is a request from Come and Go, represented by Nick Halfhill, for rezoning a property located at 4965 Hubble Avenue. Subject property is owned by Kenneth and Denise Nearsom. A is to determine whether or not it's in conformance with 2020 Community Character Plan. B is to rezone it from Ag to PUD. And C is approval of a PUD concept. Eric, you have a presentation on that one? Thank you, sir.
The other thing I wanted to point out is we do have a sign up for anyone that plans to speak. They can just come anytime, and we want to make sure that they print their name and address so that we have that.
All right.
So we can get clear addresses and so forth in our minutes. Item 2 is a request from Come and Go. The property is located at the northeast corner of the city, basically. Recently annexed in 2009. This property is at the what I would say is the northeast corner, although you have a acute angled intersection there. It's to the east of the intersection. To the east of it is an RV sales and RV conversion type business. To the south is the East Broadway Business Park, mini storage, the old Homemakers store, furniture store. So this comprises over 2 acres. So it's required under the design guidelines to go to the PUD zoning in order to be considered as a gas station convenience store. In this one of the 4 requests from Come and Go on your agenda, this is a little bit different in the fact that it is proposing a diesel station, which basically they would have a separate canopy area, pump island for diesel trucks, and it'll be taller because it needs to accommodate the height of trucks. The other thing is to get the exposure to the 65, 69 bypass. They are proposing a sign, a pole type sign, which is different from the other sites that they're proposing.
Eric, let me ask you a question, and I'm getting ahead of you, I know, and I apologize, but have we submitted this to Traffic and Transportation and got any return from them?
Yes, they've reviewed it. They had to provide some preliminary trip distribution, trip generation.
And how many trips do we have running through that spot?
I don't know the answer to that. You might ask the consultant for the applicant. But traffic did not suggest any specific improvements to what's already there. They're not proposing any different drive entrances, and they didn't warrant any additional traffic control. at this point in time.
That's a hotel right now. What are the number of occurrences that we have people coming into that hotel versus what the potential is for occurrences with a come and go?
Certainly that'll be higher. But the one thing that comes into play here is the proximity of interchanges
That's my
to,
concern.
to a light. So they probably would not warrant, you don't want to have additional lights necessarily at intersections.
No, but
So,
currently you have a light at Hubble
yes,
and Broadway. You have a light at 65 and Hubble. You got a light at Broadway and Hubble, or I mean 65. I'm not sure about 50th Street.
correct. So if you added more traffic control to that, it would probably create more congestion. And so the widths and the geometry of the accesses, traffic is okay with in terms of right lane out, right lane, right and left turns out on both instances. So they believe there's enough controlled access to this site. They didn't allow any additional. Certainly they don't want any more access points to the site from those routes.
Have they also looked at speed limits in that area?
Well, I would assume that traffic would consider the speed limit there, yeah. I can't personally attest to that.
Okay, thanks.
Getting back to the proposed site, one of the things that staff wanted to ensure was their design proposed a enclosure area right at the northwest corner of their proposed building. And so we're suggesting that they move that somewhere to a location that's away from the closest point of the building to a public street. There's opportunities in this area. I know that gets their staff moving across areas where there's fueling and so forth going on. However, the frequency of trash removal from the building probably isn't going to create that many conflicts. The design consideration is probably more important. The other thing is we were proposing to, we did point out that in order to get tax abatement, they may have to provide additional window openings on this facade here, and we wanted them to be aware of that. Although they are providing materials, brick materials, durable materials in a 360 around this, and they do have 3 entrance locations within the building. The other thing is they are proposing the use to be able to sell liquor, wine, and beer at this location. Separation did not come into an issue in terms of not meeting what would typically be required for separation. We do want to make sure that their tree plantings were matching what's required in the standards that they set, which was the C2 requirements. So the concept plan should reflect additional plantings based on those lineal number of feet of off-street parking area and maneuvering. We did want the columns to be clad in brick. They were proposing a steel pole design. And I think that's about it at this point in time. There's not any specific questions. Staff did not take issue with the pole sign because we believe the fact that they're providing the diesel fueling function, that's critical to their exposure for that function. So, and we didn't think the design was out of character for that area.
Any questions?
I'll show you the consent map. And I also have photos if anyone needs to see photos. I'm trying to keep the length of our presentations down tonight if I can help it.
Okay. Mike Chesson.
Yeah, Eric, also just to confirm, recent requests to the Board of Adjustment for pole signs adjoining the interstate have generally been approved and supported by our Board of Adjustment, is that correct?
Yeah, and this actually wouldn't have warranted if this had been like a C2 zoning, this wouldn't have required any type of Board of Adjustment action. So
Thank you.
it's still within the height
Any questions? Seeing none? Eric, thank you. The applicant present, please come forward, give us your name and address. Please sign in before you come forward.
You can probably put down which numbers you're here for too.
Apologies for not doing this prior.
It's all right.
Anyone else that plans to speak, I wish you would come up here and do it before you have your chance to speak.
It's a change to me, so. I know.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the commission, thanks for having us tonight for 4 items. I apologize for stacking them up on you, but appreciate your time and allowing us to do so. We've Nick Halfhill with Come and Go, first of all, 6400 West Town Parkway, West Des Moines.
I'm sorry, first name?
Nick Halfhill. My name is stated on the application as well. Again, we have 4 items here before you tonight. We thought it important to bring all 4 before the commission and ultimately before the council, as they're all PUD rezonings, and at once to convey our intent and what we feel is a big deal for us. It's a very large investment in bringing this many stores forward at once. So again, we appreciate you hearing us tonight. As Eric's put up a closer, a little further in, I brought one that was a little further out. Again, this is the triangle quadrant that currently houses the Archer Motel. Over to the east, you can see the edge of Prairie Meadows, Adventureland up here, and then some of the areas in Altoona east of the 65 bypass, again, in the far northeast quadrant of Des Moines. This site is about just under 4 acres, which is quite large for us in any vicinity. Would be the largest site that we have very near Des Moines. The current largest site in Des Moines would be down on Guthrie, what we refer to as 4110, our store that's been there for about, I think, 4 or 5 years now. At any rate, the diesel islands that Eric spoke of are out to the east of the site. Up front is a canopy with 10 dispensers, which is our typical prototype today. 5,000 square foot, which is $49.92, just under 5,000 square foot store behind. This diesel, although it is 6 inches higher underneath to allow for any type of truck to traverse that site, we do have semis. If you look at our store down in Guthrie, it's near transportation facilities down there, so there's a lot of trucks in the area. There are some facilities in the area. I think our neighbor actually has some semi-trailers. However, we don't expect it to be a truck stop. There are a few stalls out to the northeast corner here. There's 4 stalls out there to provide for interim parking, but it's not an overnight, it's not an extended stay, nothing. We obviously don't compete with the truck stop Bosselman's that's further up Hubble near I-80. But it is our intent that we serve the farming community when possible, construction traffic. There's an implement dealer to the south, those larger trucks that do enjoy that, the larger navigable area on the site, versus forcing them to come under the canopy out front here, which is very tight. Again, part of the largeness of this site, we have some detention proposed over to the west. The DOT currently has a warrant in this area, but it's basically an access restriction, which we have 2 terrific access points, which have already been discussed a little bit. We have, of course, ran this through the engineering department through our review process with staff. They have approved at this stage our access points without modification to the roadways. Obviously, to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, there will be more traffic here, as we can guess, than the Archer Motel is currently demanding. However, they have obviously been discussion points with staff. Utilities to this area, sanitary sewer is actually to the south in the Hubble development. I don't want to get into too in-depth of site plan discussions, but to let you know where we're working with the folks at Hubble. and they're going to allow us to connect. It's in the right of way, so to a public sewer system that's in 50th to the south, and we'll extend that across Northeast 46th Avenue into our site. And that will actually extend into this central area, which will serve our neighbor in the future if that need is there as well, just as far as standard development practice. Our open space is quite a bit larger than the C2 regulations or any standard, I guess our site plan regulations would require today. We're required at this point to have 1,000 per fueling position, of which there's 26. And actually our open space on this site is in the neighborhood of 40,000. There it is. A lot larger, 76,000. Finally, the elevations, which are part of this presentation, is our facility which we've built already on Southwest 9th. I'm sorry, Southeast 14th Street, so Southeast 14th and Deal. We have this facility already built. This was the same elevation that this body approved for our 120 site on Southwest 9th prior as well. All the sites you have before you this evening share this same facade. This building, again, 4992. If you've been into our new store, the difference between an older come and go on this site is that it's a full kitchen, offers full pizza, full pies for sale, fresh sandwiches, etc., as well as just a greater multitude of the standard offerings. Again, the canopy height for the truck is just a little bit higher than standard, and we do have the 40-foot sign. An interstate sign for us is more in the area of 80 to 120 foot. That's what we would define as 80, or as an interstate sign. So the 40-foot for us is just trying to gather some of that traffic from the north, but not trying to be very obtuse about it. So with that, appreciate your time this evening. I appreciate your positive action, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions?
Just one question. This might apply to all your projects, but will this be a LEED project?
Yeah, thank you. I forgot part of my presentation. All of our stores actually start out LEED certified. So the building in and of itself is certified. We have a LEED volume program where we've certified our documents ahead of time, so long as we maintain our standard. Each one is submitted and can be audited at any time to confirm that we've conformed to our standard. But our standard is actually certified, so no matter where we put our building, it's already LEED certified. We just had, in the past week, I got a notification that we had a silver and a gold site. So we will maintain LEED certified. When the site allows, points are added, and we can actually increase that certification to a higher standard. So we have a few that are jumping up there. It's pretty hard to get too high, but it starts with the building that's there. These facilities that we'll be demolishing if we go forward, we'll start with the recycling program where they'll look at actually full reuse of the building. This type of building, probably not, but if it were a metal structure where we could take it down, put it back up, resell, etc., we'll gather points through that as well. So all fully recycled as much as possible, and then of course with our energy savings of the building and the mandates of stormwater quality that Des Moines has help us as well there.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I have a question. Have you had any discussion with traffic and transportation about reducing highway speeds in that area?
I have not.
Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? In opposition to the application, please come forward. Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward. I blew that. Likewise, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Move.
Greg's going to move. Got it. Any discussion? I'm going to discuss it briefly. I can't vote in favor of this. I don't think it's a bad plan. I'm concerned about what's going to happen there. We put in a gas station over on Frederick Hubble and Douglas, and we've killed a couple people over there. and I'm concerned that the speed limits in there are 45 to 50 miles an hour. And we're going to have people turning right and turning left into a gas station. And that's my concern. I think traffic and transportation should look into this. The speed limits begin at about 45 miles an hour around 42nd Street, maybe a little bit farther to the east. I think in light of some of the things that we put in there, they ought to look into reducing the speeds in there to 35. I know it's not going to make people happy, but it will certainly make people happy to save lives, and that's what I'm looking for. Ted, did you have something?
Yeah, Dan, I'm going to take exception with what you said. The phrase, "we killed a couple of people at the other location," I'm not a party to any of that. And I don't appreciate that language relative to this. Traffic makes those decisions. We don't. I don't think it'd be appropriate there either.
But we made the decision with respect to the zoning. Anyway.
I'm
not gonna
registering
argue. I'm not gonna
objection to
argue.
that characterization.
I'm not going to argue with you. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? I'm the lone opposition. Okay, thank you. Item number 3. Nick, you probably shouldn't have sat down, huh? Yeah. Item number 3 is request from Come and Go, represented by Nick, is it Half Hill? All right, Half Hill, for an amendment to the PUD concept plan, Eastgate Plaza, to create a separate PUD conceptual plan, Come and Go store 534 on property located at 1424 East Euclid Avenue, to allow 4,992 square feet of convenience store with 20 fueling locations. Eric, you presenting on this one, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
If you look at this aerial, you can see the golden boundary hash area actually is the area of the PUD for Eastgate. Some of you may have been on this commission the last go around when, well, actually, the most recent thing is the Tires Plus building here. But just prior to that, Walmart had gone through the process, but then withdrew at the last moment to amend this. And so we're working to get development started up again here in this area. The area that's really the area of concern for this amendment is where I'm circling with the end of the pen here. There's actually 2 existing entrance locations. There was a traffic study done and reviewed under the Walmart request that was prepared by Snyder and Associates at the time of that rezoning. Traffic has looked at that, and what you should know is that there would be a future signal location in the event that they went with a 70,000 or larger big box on the site, where you would look at having a signal at the far east entrance, which is right here east of what you may know Bebop's location. But in this area, they're just proposing to use the 2 intersections. They did work closely with traffic on the geometry, and I'm going to have them present how they've revised the geometry from what you have in their packet, because that has been something that they did recently modify since the packet went out. So there was an extensive review of this by the Traffic and Transportation Division. As you're looking across here, the other thing you should know is this area, based on improvements to the drainage in the area, was taken out of a flood hazard area, so that's no longer an issue as well. There you can see the Tires Plus that would be just to the west of this when it would be built. So, and I'll quickly go over the layout that you have in front of you, knowing that there's a little bit of a modification proposed that they will cover, and it really, the revision centered around this intersection and the desire to make sure it aligns with the ends of the median cut, and so you'll see that. which by shifting it changes the way they do their open space and so forth. The other requirement that we asked for in this was that there be some way of limiting traffic to coming off the site and going right into that, because if they started queuing up in this area, it might cause problems with traffic eventually someday when there's a big box to the north. This will actually be more of an important through corridor within the overall commercial area. So, same basic story you just saw on the last. In this case, the enclosure is in an appropriate location. We're not worried about that specific location. They still are doing the 3 entrance type approach. They're providing linkages internally and to the public sidewalk network along Euclid. They're providing open space and separating this eventually, which would be more through type traffic away from the site, avoiding conflicts there. Parking is adequate. They're actually reconstructing an area that's currently serving as parking for the Tires Plus building over there. Again, they did submit the canopy design that was not wrapped in brick, so we are recommending that they provide that. We'd also wanted them to show the seasonal and outdoor display that we would anticipate they're wanting to provide. They did show that on the previous one that you just looked at. And if they don't intend to, then that wouldn't necessarily be in condition. We do want them to revise what you're seeing here in conformance with what traffic is approved essentially for a configuration of this intersection. And this will probably be the more critical of the 2 intersections because it does have the through and the left turn ability. And then we do want the additional notes on the plan with regard to the sale of beer, wine, and liquor, which we want to have that flexibility to, if there's any type of issue with or nuisance with the sale of liquor, wine, and beer, that this could be brought back, or that the zoning officer could initiate an amendment to the conceptual plan, which would bring that back for reconsideration to modify the conceptual plan. Are there any questions? There is a consent map as well. I passed around the consent cards. We did not get any in opposition.
Okay.
I have,
Any questions, Greg?
I have a question. Will?
Start with Greg, we'll get to you, Will.
Okay.
Well, I'm just curious, what's staff's opinion or thought on why you're requiring them in all these to put brick around the columns on the canopy?
That's actually a design guideline that's in the convenience store gas station design guidelines.
There you have it.
So that was part of the original legislation.
Will?
Okay.
Will?
Eric, what is unique about this site?
You'd be like in terms of a feature or?
I don't know, I'm asking you.
It's probably not unlike what you just looked at for Hy-Vee on Southeast 14th. I'm not sure there's anything terribly unique about it other than it's a redevelopment in an area that hasn't seen a lot of development.
Well, I'm asking the question because one of the reasons for allowing the canopies the way that staff has allowed it is that staff believes that the proposed height is appropriate given the unique circumstances and grading of the site. And yet I'm hearing that
I guess
there isn't any.
In particular to that, in order to, they're asking for some leeway to keep the height of the canopy level, but have varying grades within the area underneath. So there's some slight grade change that would probably widen that to the height, maximum height that they're proposing on one end, and probably are able to achieve it on another area where the grade is higher within the site. We are not wanting them, just so you know,
It's only unique.
filling this site would probably be something we would try to steer them away from. Doing a lot of fill for this area because it starts to affect the whole site. So certainly we would look at that more holistically if we had a big box center.
Oh, I'll get to you. Joanne?
The changes that you're talking about, are those all going to be handled by staff, or is that anything that we need to add to our?
Well, we're recommending those as conditions, so when that would come, if they got that approved at council, we would, before we finalize the PUD document, we would ensure that all those things were taken care
We're
of.
proposing it be staff.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Mike, you had something?
Just real quick, back to Mr. Page's question about the height. I expect that within the next year, we'll be coming back with some revisions to the design guidelines for C-stores. With the exception of a later item, the commission has approved a taller height than what is our standard, I think, every time it's been requested by the development. The first one would have been, or one of them was Casey's up on Douglas Avenue where that was approved, it was requested. Our guidelines, we were patterned after city in Arizona when they were originally written. And upon further review, that city has truly a dark sky ordinance in place. I don't know that an extra foot or two really affects that much, but I do know they did have a more stringent requirement because of that. But again, in past reviews the commission has had on C-stores, with the exception of one that I'm aware of, the commission has basically granted relief to that height requirement, and I would fully expect there to be probably a text amendment to the code on the guidelines in the next year to make that just by right. So, thank you.
So everybody understands when he's talking about dark sky, he's talking about light pollution, and the purpose behind that is to, and I know the commission understands that, but maybe some of the people in the audience don't understand that. When we're talking about dark sky, we're trying to reduce as much light pollution as we possibly can. That's the reason why those canopies are lowered, so that the lights don't emit as high as we normally would have. Any other questions?
Just another comment about the canopy. Just so I understand, the canopy, the bottom of the canopy, if you were underneath it, the height of the ceiling, if you will, of the canopy, where will that be at?
That has to be at least 13 feet 9 inches, because you want to have the ability to get emergency vehicles and then the trucks that may be maneuvering to the large fueling area where they actually feed the tanks. The large tanks have to be clear so that they're not knocking into the canopy.
And ultimately, that's where these canopies will be, even in the next item at 13.
Their standards are a little higher. I think their bottom is normally 15.
15.6.
Yeah, 15 and a half. So what we've seen from all the developers that have come in is that they have a little bit, but we say there has to be at least 13 feet 9.
Okay.
And then the idea with the maximum height is then not to have too wide of a fascia on that canopy all the way around. So,
And on top of the fascia will be the 2 foot 6 inch rest of the icon. Is that correct? Is that
yes.
what we're?
That's what they're proposing in those areas. So when you look at this elevation, and we will, because it's a PUD, we'll hold them to the typical elevation. So on 3 sides, they're proposing these little, I call them buttons, to go above the height of the canopy. So technically the height, the way we define height in our ordinance is to the top of that.
Thank you.
Any other? Jack, did you have something?
Well, that's a point of view, when the PUD hold them to the $3.30.
I think I'm in favor of that, aren't you?
That would be an interesting one to enforce.
Maximum of 3. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Eric's the applicant present. I know what the deal is.
Yes.
Nick, why don't
Yes,
you come on up and give us your name and address? I think you signed in before, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Nick Halfhill with Come and Go, 6400 West Town Parkway, West Des Moines. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, thank you for having me this evening. As Eric alluded to, we have made amendments to the plan. We were able to get most of the changes made in time to bring it here tonight. However, obviously you have the older version, so we thought we'd go ahead and show it to you. Starting off, it all has to do with the centering of this lane in these existing medians. There's also an older driveway to the south. It's offset in and of itself. We've worked with engineering staff and got this driveway very centered now. If you look at, there's a landscape strip on the east side of the drawing that you have. It's gone now. Because this is a greater shopping center that will be amended as part of, based on the backbone of this driveway here, as well as the other one to the east that Eric mentioned, as far as the two main throats, if you will, into the big box in the future. The landscape setback for whatever parking lots over here in the future would act likely very like ours, and therefore that will take care of that buffering issue along that driveway. So we've added this island here. We agree when we can do that, it's just better because it gets clogged up in this vicinity otherwise. It's not always possible, but when we can, we went along with staff there. As a part of that, we lost some landscaping along the side. And obviously, this is a PUD, so we can appeal to you to lower that number, but we did not. We actually went back to the drawing board and tried to find more open space. This island here has grown by reducing the width of this driveway. It's still 36 foot wide. It's wider than a typical, it's just a large 3-lane still, so there's plenty of room in there for whatever may happen in the future. We've also, this row of parking along here, when there's nothing that would restrict them from overhanging, they're reduced to 17 foot, which is allowable by code. And we've also decreased our front drive area. Our tanks now are out to the north. Typically, we have to have a larger area out front in order to get our fuel tank truck through there. In this case, because they're not there, you can see all the lines on here. There's an awful lot of infrastructure in the ground in this facility, or the public infrastructure already, I guess. So anyway, we couldn't put them there. We got more green space out front. We widened that green space between Euclid and our store. So we're still conforming to the open space. While I'm talking about that, this large island here, Eric mentioned that this, the East Gate in general, the whole area is in the regional basin that's to the north, and water quality is still required, however. So seeing that we're so tight in the middle of this sea of old concrete in the East Gate Center, we are actually proposing underground water quality, basically storm check chambers, which we're utilizing on several sites. So they'll be down here. They take care of that water quality before we put it into the public system, and then they're cleaned out periodically. 2-acre site exactly, so that perfect PUD 2 acres. Because we're defining lines within the middle of the old Eastgate Center and the PUD plan that is there now, we set it at the 2 acres. It's big enough for us, and at the requirement for the PUD in order to amend this larger PUD out here. Our access points, again, using the pre-approved access point here now lined up. The controlled intersection, as Eric mentioned, will be to the east, over closer to the Bebop's, our existing Bebop site. This access point exists today, so we'll be utilizing that as well. These all along here, really, you can see the stalls to the north, and then in this vicinity, we're cutting a few of those out to get this rear access. This is, as you see, there's a bit of an intersection back here. This has been worked out with Norman Weinstein, the owner of the larger area, to maintain center access through this area. These stalls, part of our stalls to the north, are not just come and go. We like to have a lot of parking, but this is pretty extreme. These are actually to mitigate with our cellar. Those stalls that we're taking out in this area, we're going a little above and beyond per he and his neighbors, or in his tenant's request, I guess, basically Tires Plus. They use that area back there. So We're maintaining some of that there and then adding more to the north. We'll obviously use it. We like to put our staff out around the corner, you know, a little bit further away, so we'll go ahead and do that. Again, I think we've met all the standard qualifications as far as what the C2 bulk regulations would require of us. The same building that I most recently talked about, the lead items, and I didn't go all the way into the lead discussion before, but since we had a pretty good discussion on the canopies there, part of our canopy want has nothing to do, you might think we want a taller canopy for exposure. In this case, 2 foot, whether it's 18 foot, 20 foot, it really doesn't do a lot. It's perspective going down the road, and that's not enough of a difference for us. But it is a difference underneath it, and we have a few sites where we've built them lower in that 18 to 19 foot range. One's in Loveland, Colorado, where we get a snowpack. Obviously, we try to keep our lots very clean, but where you have snow and ice in that cycle that we get into in winter, it decreases that dimension for one. And these long canopies, when you're going right underneath them, that might be 50 foot wide by 100 and some feet. Going directly underneath it, depending on the elevation of the parking lot in that vicinity, which we don't have many large trucks going directly underneath the middle of these ones that are right out in front of the store. However, they may traverse the edge of it. That's where we get into these grade issues and we get the canopies hit. And it's basically the issue. So we like to put it up high enough where we think it's still reasonable. However, it's not going to get damaged. The second part of that conversation is it's a 3 foot facade. If you've seen any new come and go on the metro, including on Southeast 14th and Dale, it's the same facade and the same bump here. And it ends up being 20 foot, 10 inches total. That's a 2 foot, 10 inch circle that kind of hits up above there. So there's a lot of maintenance issues behind it. And I guess I would just appeal to you to understand that it's not it's not a big of a difference in the marketing prospect. Now, our canopy is important to us for marketing, of course. That's another reason why I'm here on another item tonight. Standardization in that for us is huge, but that dimension isn't necessarily the key factor there. The lighting on our entire site in relation to the dark skies, I don't know, depending on which ordinance it might be that day, it varies across the country, and I think there are more standardized versions of that probably coming down the pike at some time in the future. All of our fixtures are cut off, meaning there's no globe that hangs below. They're LED fixtures, so they shine fairly focused just by the sheer nature of them and their reflectors. That goes for the site lighting on the perimeters as well as the canopy lighting underneath. So there's nothing that hangs down. The one would require that anyway, but it's our standard as well. The LED is not a standard from the city standpoint, but it's what we do as part of our energy savings and our LEED program. With that, appreciate your consideration again, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? CJ?
I just have a comment. I would like to just congratulate or give kudos to Come and Go for taking the lead and setting a standard on promoting LEED buildings, because it's very important to the future generations, and I want to congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I should add, Mr. Chairman, that I am in agreement with all the staff's conditions.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? In favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? In opposition? Likewise, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion? Ted? Ted moves staff. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation, Kathy. All right, moving on to item number 4. Once again, Nick's going to come back and visit us. It's a request from Come and Go, represented by Niv Halfhill for a amendment to PUD conceptual plan Come and Go Store 120 on property located at 6304 Southwest 9th Street to revise provisions limiting the maximum canopy height to allow, in order to allow a canopy with a maximum height of 20 feet, 10 inches. Eric, you're presenting on this one, sir?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, and I'll just be quick. This is really pretty much to the point of coming back and asking you to revise limitation that you placed on the canopy previously, just to get their standardization from a staff perspective. We didn't recommend that reduction in the previous review of this PUD area. So we're comfortable with it. It's similar to everything you just looked at for the standard canopy height.
Eric, what do our guidelines say?
Our guidelines say 18 feet.
Okay.
And the guideline in itself doesn't really define, any difference in grade. We kind of have to defer to our building height definition in term to get a little flexibility on average height, so to speak. But again, what we're finding on a lot of these is the terrain issue across the site varies.
So if we put something in there 18 feet at the minimum, would that in any way impact?
Well, 18 would be the guideline under the design guidelines.
And I understand that. You have a minimum of 18 feet so that if,
Actually, it's a maximum. Yeah.
well, I understand. What I'm saying is if we say a minimum of 18 feet so that if terrain falls off, you get a higher canopy, right? Is that
Well, I
what we're
think
talking about?
Better approach would be to bump the it up enough to accommodate a reasonable percentage.
So what you're
grade
saying is
change.
the maximum is going to be 20 feet.
Yeah, they're proposing 2010 to get the sign bump
Okay,
on it.
but that would be the maximum, then it's 20 feet, 10 inches, is what you're
Yes,
saying.
yeah.
So even if the topography falls off, that most of they have on height wise.
Well, that was, my understanding is on their proposal, that would accommodate that, so,
All right,
yeah.
all right, I understand that. Thanks. Any other questions? The applicant present? Nick, are you back? Sorry.
You're getting to know me anyway.
Sometimes it gets a little boring back there. You got
Again, Nick Halfhill, Come and Go, 6400 West Town Parkway, West Des Moines. Thank you for humoring me this evening. Or dealing with me maybe is more appropriate. But at any rate, this elevation, again, I think I discussed it in the last hearing a little bit of why we're here. I think it's at least a courtesy, and if you have the questions direct. I wasn't at the last discussion with the commission. However, I do know we fully agreed to the condition to lower our canopy and basically changed this signage so it would fit within that 3-foot facade. What I also know is that from our top down, I've been instructed that's not acceptable for us. And as we look at it, just I guess the context is we built a new store on Southeast 14th and Deal. It has this style of facade and signage, and we've not germane to Des Moines, but in the Des Moines metro, in other cities, we've built this same style, and we're looking for that brand consistency. That's what's important to us. And if it's acceptable in several areas and already acceptable within your city, that's why we don't think it's boastful to come back and ask you to reconsider. And I hope you understand the context of that and take it as such that it's we feel it's a fair request. This elevation does, the color is a little bit off on the large screen here, but it does represent the brick wraps that do match our building elevations. That's the different stripes, if you will, in there, the different colors. And that is the same treatment that the other canopies would have that we've discussed this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions, sir.
any questions? Thank you, Nick. Oh, I'm sorry, Joanne, I didn't see.
It seems to me that their requirement for this height from the top, it's a little arbitrary. It was your representatives suggestion to lower the, what you call a button, down into the canopy. The reason for the request was that you are in a residential area here, not a highway. Southeast 14th has nothing to do with Army Post Road and Southwest 9, as far as I'm concerned. You have a design that is quite prominent, shall we say. Nobody's going to miss this store. And therefore, having your canopy at the proper height because of the grading, you have a grading problem or issue there, and lowering those buttons down into the canopy, to me, is perfectly reasonable request. And you agreed to it, and it was your idea last time, and you agreed to it this time. I don't understand why this is back, other than an arbitrary comment from your boss.
Would you like me to respond?
Yeah, do you have a
Yeah.
It's just that it's a marketing standard. We want to be consistent across our brand image, and it is purely that. It's not. Understand that it is arbitrary to you. It's not arbitrary to us because it's our brand standard. That doesn't necessarily need to concern you. I understand that, but it is a standard that we demand within our internal walls that we uphold. So I come back before you to ask you to allow that. And I guess beyond that, your opinion, ma'am.
It's a neighborhood.
Any other questions? Mike, just.
Eric, could you put up the aerial photo and show what uses are across the street? General vicinity, if you could point out.
Tim's got something to say. I'll wait.
Oh, Tim, just.
I would just like to see, we did get a card in opposition. I want to see exactly where that property was located to the,
It's a small one, but
301.
Southwest 10th would be on the back side, probably.
I don't think it's that, it's a deep block, so they were not, if you recall, the neighbors were concerned about fencing, and it's this area right here. This is the Hardee's.
But 10th is right back here, farther up, right?
To the west.
Eric, which home was in opposition?
Back
To this request,
53.
would be the third one up here, right here. It's hard to see, it looks like they have a shared driveway with another house.
This is,
I'm sorry, it's this one.
What's the schematic look like on the plan?
yeah, where exactly is the canopy?
I mean, are the canopies going to be by that place?
No, the canopies are to the east.
No?
Okay.
Eric, what uses are across the street in general?
This here is
There's a
Hardee's.
vacant
It's a brand new Hardee's.
commercial center here that a church has purchased. They've got some office function. This is a vacant gas station site where the gas station and the tanks were removed.
Clear Channel was sold.
This is an office building here too. And then this is a old appliance and television store that was converted to a church offices. And
Yeah.
so if you look at this arrangement, the canopy is a two stacked array of, it's like 12, I'm sorry, 10. So there'd be 20 fueling locations here. The store would be at closer to the neighborhood. And I think the raised portion would not be on the west side, correct? Correct.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Thanks, Tim. Okay. You had a question for Nick. Greg?
Nick, I had a question for you. I was trying to, the sign that's on the canopy, are the white letters the only part that's lit, or is the whole thing lit? I can't remember.
Thing is
It's,
lit.
the whole thing's lit. It's backlit.
whole thing's lit.
It's
Okay.
a single unit sign.
Well, my thought on this is,
Correct, just the old.
my thought kind of for the board is that I think your signage is discreet, well-designed. I don't think it's overly gregarious and huge. My opinion, even though I know there's a history with something was agreed to before, I think it's fine the way it is. I think it could be significantly bigger and we'd have a different issue, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Jack?
We're not changing the size of the button, we're just moving the button up on the facade. We're not changing the amount of light emitted from the button, we're just moving the button up on the facade.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? I think I've been through this, haven't I? I can't remember. I'm going to open the public hearing just to make sure. Anybody here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none. Anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Likewise, seeing none. I'm going to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to put this up on the, I didn't,
I'm sorry, consent. You're right. Thank you.
you had the cards, but I wanted to show it for the record.
Thank you. Ted's your motion?
So are we going to discuss, you want a motion first?
Well, motion first, then we'll,
What, no, you can,
you're going to
No,
move
I'm
staff?
You want
my,
to,
I'm just
going
itching.
to make a different motion?
My nose was itching, so,
Okay.
no, if you
Ted's
want
going to
to make,
move staff.
I guess Ted's moving stuff.
Okay.
But I have a comment.
Discussion. Go ahead, Ted.
The Joanne's concern about it being a neighborhood, I think, is a valid one. And I think that the problem that I have in general with your consistent marketing plan throughout is, I understand why you do it, and from a business standpoint, I completely understand, but Des Moines is not the same everywhere, and there are different design standards or different expected design standards in different neighborhoods. And I think that the way we think of things downtown, and the way we think of things in older neighborhoods versus newer neighborhoods and so on, I think we have to think differently, and cookie cutter is a problem in general. And so, although I appreciate it, and personally, I don't see an issue with it here either, but I'm certainly not going to sign up for letting everybody do what they do for their marketing plan everywhere in town because it's easier for them. I don't have an issue with this one, but yeah, I in no way am endorsing doing it the same everywhere.
Any other? Tim?
I just want to echo what Ted just said. I'm excited for Come and Go building on Southwest 9th. We know we need everything that we can get in there, and it's good to see those things. However, Joanne made a very valid point also. I was concerned till we talked about it a little more. I think Jack kind of put it in perspective. And again, we need to pay special attention when we get into these neighborhoods that we do micromanage them. That's why we're here. So, thanks.
Greg?
I was resisting saying something, but I must. I don't like the fact that we're inching this canopy higher and higher and higher and higher. It's low for a reason. It's both for light pollution and for signage pollution. And no matter what Come and Go says, this is a sign. And it does matter how tall it is. And I wish we weren't allowing them taller. However, from a design point of view, I like the button being above the sign. It looks better, it reads better, it should be there. I wish there was a way to get the whole thing lower, but I don't see that there's a way allowing for grade change on the bottom. To me, that's their problem. They should grade the site so it can fit within our standard of height. With all that said, And with this being a PUD, and with the history of how PUDs go, I'm going to vote for it.
Will?
I think that this discussion has been helpful, and I respect the director and believe the director when he says that this is going to be looked at with C-stores in the future, and I hope in the near future, because the discussion this evening and the discussions that have occurred beforehand have shown that there are real problems along this line, and the city of Des Moines is not addressing correctly these problems to come up with an appropriate solution. We are put into a difficult situation as a commission all the time because of the guidelines and the regs we have. And quite frankly, I regret having to call a member of staff on the carpet because staff has had to use a reason to allow something that doesn't make, in my opinion, common sense. Thank you.
Joanne, did you have something?
I would like to see this stay where it's at because neighborhoods matter. We have a number of things in our city planning that is different for different areas of the city. And why this can't work in a neighborhood as opposed to a highway, which Southeast 14th is a highway, it's Highway 65, 69. Southwest 9th is not, Army Post is not. Directly behind all of the retail is homes. And I find these great big gas stations intrusive anyway, but Come and Go is a real good company. I have nothing against Come and Go. Your design here is bright and light, and it's going to stand up and say, look at me. It doesn't need the extra height in a neighborhood. It just doesn't need it. And because so many companies are requiring or asking for additional height, that the city would think that it's okay to go ahead and give it to them, bothers me. I would like to see different recommendations for different parts of the city between highway and commercial, or highway and residential. So, I mean, I just cannot see that it is so necessary to raise this just because somebody upstairs thought it should be consistent.
Any other comments? Jack, did you have anything?
Well, I was just trying to see where the buttons go in relation to adjacent structures. To the east, while it's called a residential neighborhood, it's commercial. Along the corridor there, where this button is going to face. And then on the north and the south elevations, I can't tell how tall the building, the commercial building is to the north, and whether it's equal the height of, what is this?
2 stories at least.
Equal the height of, how tall is this, Nick? North elevation?
Bear with me.
Yeah, okay, 20 foot 10.
Oh, the sign itself, or the canopy?
Yeah, when you have the canopy at maximum height as you propose at 20 foot 10 with the button up above the roof level, if you will,
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to figure out how that relates to the height of the commercial building we see to the north of your canopy. And I just can't tell on my Google Earth here how tall that building is. That's what I'm getting at.
I don't know the height. I would, but our
Two-story building?
If that, Jack, it used to be a Rex center, a Rex, REX. They sold
Stereos.
stereo equipment.
Oh.
And then it was Knoll Custom Pools, and I believe now it's a place of worship. But it's about a story and a half.
Okay, so sort of equal to or greater than 20 feet, 10 inches. And then on the south, There used to be a restaurant there as depicted in the old picture that we've had projected for us, and now it's parking lot for Hardee's? All right. So none of these buttons are projecting directly at a residence, so to speak. Fair? Fair. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'm going to call to a vote. All those in favor of staff's recommendation, please signify by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You got them? You're gonna get the, you got 9. And I'll give you the opposition. All those opposed, same sign. It's going to be Will, myself, and joining. Got it? All right. Thank you. It carries. Moving on to item number 5. Okay. Another request from Come and Go. Sorry, Nick. For following actions related to rezoning property at 1300, 1310, 1330 Keosauqua Way. Vacate an irregular segment of Keosauqua Way adjoining the northeast and east portions of the subject property comprising 1,301 square feet. And determine whether or not the proposed rezoning is in conformance with the 2020 Community Character Plan, rezoning the property from C2 General Retail and Highway-oriented Commercial to PUD, and approval of the PUD conceptual plan. Eric, are you presenting on this?
Yes,
one?
Mr. Chair, and I think distributed to each of you, we had a letter to the commissioners from the Oak Ridge neighborhood, which is the entity which...
Yeah, actually I have 2, Eric. One is from Margaret Johnson and Families of Oak Ridge, and then Margaret Johnson, well, both of them. All right.
Right, and I'm not sure, other than an individual, I'm not sure that's a legal entity of any type. It's just a collection, I mean, Oak Ridge neighborhood is more of a general term, I think, on that.
And I'm going to ask it to be received and filed.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that you had that, and then I'm passing around some of those other letters that you may have also gotten, but came in. And then we had some other pieces that didn't have a signature to them that we received, but I'm not going to admit those because they didn't have a signature or name. This request, I'm going to cover the vacation component of it quickly first, just so you understand what we're talking about. There's an amount of the Keo right-of-way, and it's legally defined as Crocker, but just so you know, we name and identify this segment all as Oak Ridge Drive for the benefit of the motoring public, I should say, so that people can find Oak Ridge Drive. If we put a separate sign here and Crocker was there, we would, but legally this is Crocker Street. This gold right here is the representative. There's actually a little notch at the south and east end, and I will show you quickly the proposed plat for that. Just so you have an understanding of what we're talking about. And it's hard to see on this drawing because there's so many little boundaries and so forth, but the thickness of that line is actually the thickness of the right-of-way we're talking about along Keo. And then we're talking about this little pie piece right here being added and incorporated into the overall site.
Hey, Eric, is that additional little piece there necessary in order to?
It was a traffic, and we received comment or review by all of our departments, and there's no public necessity for those pieces of right-of-way.
It is necessary to get to the 2 acres.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. But in terms of whether it's necessary for right-of-way, it's been determined from all the departments of.
But it is necessary to get to the 2 acres so it can make a
Yes,
PUD.
they are asking for it to be able to become a PUD, yes.
All right.
So getting through with that component of it. We're now moving on to the request for the PUD. It's comprised of 3 parcels currently. I know that gets blurry when I zoom in that far, but can you see the dark black lines? So we have a piece here that has a small building that's vacant. This is the business called Hot Off the Press, which is a small printing press business. That will remain within the PUD. And then this is the laboratory, was a prosthetic laboratory most recently and is vacant currently. That would be removed, and this would be removed to provide the overall site area. I have photos. This is looking to the south into downtown. There is a get and go directly to the south. This is parking to the south that is operated by CenturyLink for their employees. I'm not sure how utilized it is currently, but it's there and it's open. This is the Oak Ridge Learning Center, which is a daycare facility and amongst other things within that premises. And that is one of the considerations under this for the sale of beer and wine. PUDs are not subject to the same standards of the zoning for conditional use and separation for businesses selling liquor. However, we as staff sort of evaluate those in terms of the real impact they may or may not cause in this instance. PUDs by their nature are larger sites and have more ability to sort of absorb some of those separations. So we've looked at it from that standpoint, and we are not, the fact that they're selling beer and wine, which requires a separation of 150 feet under the most recently adopted standards for other commercial zones, we do not believe this violates the spirit of that, although if you go property line to property line, it's about 66 feet. Just in case you're wanting to know what that separation is.
Eric, do you have an aerial to get
Yes.
us oriented to where this?
Yeah, so here's the site. This is the Oak Ridge Learning Center building that you saw in the picture, parking lot to the south, or to the north of that building, but to the south of this site. The other thing you should know is there's about 17 scattered in-home licensed daycares that are part of the Oak Ridge neighborhood itself. 17 within rental units of the Oak Ridge neighborhood that are currently registered with state of Iowa. Some of those are within a parcel that would have a separation consideration normally. Some of them are probably in a parcel that's outside of that. So from a technical perspective, some of those are in, some of those are out of that separation issue if it was a commercial zone. This is looking north into the property. That's the building that used to serve as the prosthetics laboratory. That's a billboard that's on the property to the north of it. That would come down with this request. That's looking more to the straight east. You can see the Owen Christ auto body.
Wait, Eric, you said that sign will come down if it's...
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This is looking straight north and across Keogh. That's the Owen Christ Auto Body Center. And I think that's all of the photos I have. I wish I had better ones from the east, but I didn't feel like dodging traffic that day, I guess.
Where's the new construction?
New construction.
Just to the north of it?
There's this weird, I guess I shouldn't say weird, but an unusual, irregular shaped parcel.
Okay.
Is where the Silver Oak Senior Apartments, which is also part of the Oak Ridge entity.
And there's also going to be a daycare in there, I understand.
Yes, there will be a daycare as part of that facility, yes.
Yeah.
This is a map that reflects the consent that we received. So the Oak Ridge owns all of this area that's green. This is the get and go parcel. And some of the others are rental, so they don't, that you got in terms of letters in opposition due to the fact that they're rental, we don't post them on the consent.
Eric, I had a question on the consent map.
Yes,
The one that's red, I think, is the other C-store.
yes.
Does that C-store sell alcohol and?
Yeah, they've been, I think they've probably been selling wine ever since the state released the beer and wine, since the state released the requirements for being state-owned facilities, so.
So you're speaking of get and go.
But they were under a different standard when they were approved, so.
Greg?
Eric, is Traffic and Transportation proposing that they light this intersection, signalize?
They requested traffic analysis and they are not, they required or asked for limited access points. So what you'll see that they've reduced the number of drive entrances total from 5 down to 2. So you have one coming in from the south. But they did not require any special facilities to the adjoining right-of-way.
How about the median here? Is there any proposal?
They didn't recommend any geometry modification to the adjoining right-of-ways at this point. That will also, just so you know, that'll be looked at again more closely at the development plan review stage.
I know nothing in the Iowa code that says we have to be bound by Traffic and Transportation's recommendations. So, I'm sorry.
There is things in the Iowa code that require warrants in order to put like traffic signals and so forth. And
Agreed.
So they would have to demonstrate that in order to get a signal or
Eric.
something of that nature.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but the median and that along Keo Way is under review as part of the streetscape viewpoint from downtown up to 235 and even north of 235. So we're still in the process of reviewing all of that design and coming up with a design along Keo Way. So to ask them to
Yeah.
put something in, it very well may come out as part of that streetscape project.
The things that were of concern to staff in looking at this overall site, one of the things we wondered about or sort of looked into was, okay, the building sets generally to the west of the property away from Keo, facing Keo, sort of turns its back, but one of the considerations of that is the fact that the grade requires a retaining wall here, so it's really not directly accessible there. So what you see is a proposed pedestrian link that direction that would kind of come up and to the west in order to get that pedestrian link to the neighborhood to the west. The primary entrance would come to the east, but it would also have one to the south. We do want to make sure that this pedestrian connection is made down to Oak Ridge Drive here. The other thing we looked at was the expanse of the length of the canopy. In this case, the narrowness of the site. They've come up with a different array for their pump apparatus, which is a lineal array versus a double stacked array. So looking at the long expanse of that, staff under the design guideline is recommending that they take steps to break that up into a different, either step down, raise a segment within the center of it is another technique that we've seen in areas. In fact, I think Mike took pictures the other day of one that's getting built at 63rd and Grand in West Des Moines that has a kind of a tiered canopy system where the center sticks above the other parts of the canopy, but that would necessitate some variation on your height guideline. Excuse me?
How did he get there?
How did you get there, Mike?
I've found my ways around.
I was watching Greg.
The other thing that staff is wanting to ensure is that this gives it under the downtown design guidelines overlay district. We want to ensure that this presents a urban edge here to the edge of their site. They've done a good job of putting a landscape edge here along the pump area. We want to see that extended into the area here. We know it's going to be a little different because again, you see a retaining wall here to bring this parking up more level. But there is an opportunity to have a feature here, kind of what I would say would be a low-level landscape feature. We don't want to do something that would obstruct the vision for that driveway that is being proposed for the senior development here. But we do want to get this edge consistent with this edge from a landscaping perspective, and then we do want to see sort of a feature. And those are both elements that are in the design guidelines for convenience stores too. Most of the traffic coming towards this will be coming from off the freeway into Keogh. This is more of an entrance feature than you would actually have perhaps at this corner. There would be the opportunity to put something like that at this corner as well. Looking at the recommendation, we are recommending in favor. We do want to adopt some elements of the language that we would apply in a conditional use situation to the sale of beer and wine to ensure that they're taking operational steps to prevent the sale of beer and wine from being a nuisance to the neighborhood. So we are asking for those limitations be included in this as well, such as providing adequate litter and trash receptacles, minimum lighting, more than one employee on duty, strict no loitering policies. And we want that language in the conceptual plan so that we can enforce that if it becomes an issue or a complaint. Similar to the other requests, we also want that ability to bring this back and make a legislative amendment to the conceptual plan if it does become an issue in the future. We do also want them to show their locations for any outdoor or seasonal display like the propane tanks, stacks of firewood, that type of thing that you would see typically at a convenience store location. I spoke about the landscape treatments to the area that's labeled as B, area B to the north with the printing business, the landscape treatments. And I think that's pretty much it. The canopy, I think we're very firm on what we want to see with the canopy. So.
Good.
Eric, is there a difference in the downtown overlay district here than, say, at 16th and Grand?
Definitely, yes, definitely. This is out to the edge of the center of the urban core,
Okay.
where it transitions to the freeway area. So this is probably a better location for like a highway type commercial use versus in the core down by the Western Gateway, for example. That would probably not be as appropriate of a function to occur in that.
But what I'm asking is this, is the C-store part of the downtown overlay district is different here than it is?
Yeah, it's not on a PED corridor in the plan, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where we said we wanted to avoid auto-dominant uses was along the PED corridors that were identified in the downtown overlay district, and Keogh Way is not one of those PED
I'm
corridors.
just trying to see the
Yeah.
difference. Thank you.
Any other questions, Joanne?
What is the advantage of PUD over C2 in this instance?
The PUD requires that it be a larger site from the beginning. So PUD, you can't be below the 2 acres.
Okay, well,
So larger sites. So they're looked at differently because within them, they have the ability to provide some of the separation as a larger site. The PUD is not bound by the standards that are, because you prescribe them through the PUD itself. So by the nature of a PUD, it's not subject to other requirements that are found in standard zoning districts.
but you're coming back with restrictions that are a lot like a C2.
But we do use that as a benchmark or a baseline, and when we look at this, because generally PUDs are either mixes of uses or larger scale uses, and we certainly have standards in our zoning ordinance that we normally apply that are still good measurements of how we want to evaluate something. So we still start with that as a baseline and look at what factors would change that in a PUD. So it doesn't mean that there's an absence of the need to evaluate that impact.
CJ?
I guess I'm a little confused by your answer because at the same time, it gives the developer a lot of flexibility that they would not have under the regular standards. Is that correct?
It does, but we expect enhancements that would go beyond what is typical of a standard zoning that would have an administrative review.
Speaking of extra enhancements, I happen to live daily with the debacle that is occurring down on the Grand Avenue Bridge. And I understand that the city is doing what they could do, but I don't know how many of you have viewed what is happening on the other side of that bridge, but Casey's has done a wonderful development over there, and they have public art, they have trees, they have really made it neighborhood friendly. And I don't see any of that requirement in this PUD, and have you seen it, or have you talked to the developer about it?
One of the things we are asking for is some type of a feature, and I don't think we need to define what that is, but we do want to see some type of feature, and that's actually in the design guidelines. So if you look at that Casey's at 63rd and Grand that's going up right now, a lot of the elements of our design guidelines are being achieved through that type of development. So I don't think it would be out of line to ask for some of those things.
I think that would be a challenge.
So
That Des Moines could ask. I mean, we don't have to be afraid of that. We're the capital city. We as a commission are trying to enhance the image of our city. We have good corporate people that are willing to do it. And I just think we need to be a little more aggressive on those issues.
I don't think PUD would stand in the way of that, I guess.
Any other questions?
One thing I would like to point out about the difference between a PUD and just standard C2 zoning, I don't know if the billboard is shown where that general location is. We would, under C2 zoning, we would have a little bit of difficulty requiring a billboard to be removed on the site just as a requirement of a conditional use permit for a liquor license. Under zoning, we probably have a little bit more latitude to request those types of things. So that would be one benefit of a PUD zoning in this instance. Thank you.
Eric, I did have one question. With respect to alcohol sales, liquor sales, this would be a 24-hour store, right?
Yes, and C2 would normally allow a 24-hour store as well.
And so they'd be able to have liquor sales for 24 hours?
I think their license would restrict that.
Do we know when that is for? Or?
They're not asking to sell liquor in this instance anyway.
Well,
They're asking for a beer and wine permit.
Right, beer and wine, alcohol.
I don't know that off the top of my head. I would have to look into that, but do you know what you're...
I believe it's 2 a.m. It's 7 to 2, but
2 to 6. The hours, and certainly hours can be changed through other restrictions in the PUD too. But staff hasn't proposed those. Beer and wine are typically left, to the requirements that they already have under the licensing.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Why don't you come on up, Nick?
thank you.
C-store.
Here's your name and address for the...
Nick Halfhill with Come and Go, 6400 Westtown Parkway, West Des Moines. Eric's done a fine job of framing what we're up to here. Out of all these, we've worked extensively on this project for the past year or so. As you well know, the corridor that it's in, we've given great consideration to that. The site in and of itself presents so many challenges because it's wrapped with public roads. The topography, Keogh is one of the steepest streets right around this vicinity. The hill going into downtown we're all familiar with. Any number of issues. Additionally, we do have the beer and wine sales consideration as well. So let me get into the site and then I'll move along and interrupt me if you see fit. Again, Eric explained the 2 acres. Why we're there is directly because of a PUD, why we're requesting that PUD ordinance. It's that got to be 2 acres or to get a PUD. If you're 2 acres, you're automatically needing to go to a PUD if you're a C-store. So it's part of that regulation. It does several things for us here. In this site, we're proposing to remove everything that's under this our area, if you will, and leave the hot off the press building. His parking today goes downhill extremely quickly. The grade's pretty steep. Our original plan did not, under C2, when we started looking at this, I don't say we ignored it, but we intended to buy a portion of Mr. Hott's property and call it good. As we worked towards this, and looked at the overall area to build this into more of a center. With this, we're proposing to literally overturn the entire area and regrade and repave this parking area as part of our site, and also provide the needed detention for that area as well. Eric alluded to the wall in this vicinity. You can tell that we kind of stopped there. It's a fairly recent change, and we're more than happy to continue those discussions about, first of all, just simply complying with the corridor regulation, but also looking at something in that corner. I don't have a definition in my mind of what that might be, but we surely don't have any intent to not have that discussion. Whatever this happens in this corridor, all the plans that Des Moines has right now going for that, it's part of why we're here. The reinvigoration of downtown, from a business standpoint, it's no guess to why we're here. It's a tremendous upturn, and this is the latest, most popular spot. It's wide open for this redevelopment for us, as far as what we see as a lot of energy coming. You've got the Oak Ridge neighborhood and the facilities being built to our north here. You've got the Edmonds Academy over further west. You have all of the different neighborhoods that have a lot of vigor right now. Terrific for us from a business standpoint. Part of our layout here, as Eric mentioned, we went from 5 to 2 access points. Mr. Hott's access, actually, that's up in the corner here, will also go away. He'll access these ovals here are underground tanks, so that's actually wide open. And we've created a parking lot configuration that complies for a commercial use for his building. So we're doing a lot of improvement there that while we're not changing his facade, we're definitely doing the streetscape, and we're improving all the pavement around that area as part of our development. It is, again, the elevation that I presented prior. It's that same building.
I'm trying to focus.
Yeah. It's hurt my eyes so far. There we go.
Might be as good as it gets there.
Yeah. The difference on this is that it does not have a formal rear entrance, and actually, I don't know if you care or not, but there's a door shown there that will actually go away. And that's sometimes left on for service. In this vicinity, or this facility rather, we do not have a parking, sidewalk, any access to the rear of our building. It will actually be a landscaped area. The only reason that retaining wall is here, we could do a bit of a stem wall and run the dirt right into the back of the building, but that gets a little iffy with Iowa and our freeze-thaw cycles. So we chose to put a wall there and have a flatter landscape area below it. It's pretty straightforward. So the back of our building will not have, it'll be screened up top, but it doesn't have a formal entrance, and our operational side is definitely toward Keogh. We're also removing, due to grade, we'd love to have access on wherever we can, frankly. I mean, we're a retail user, so that probably goes without saying, but there's an access point really about right here today that we'll be removing as well. The grades are so steep in that area, it becomes a necessity. We just can't traverse it. We'd have to shut it down like the 835 North in the middle of winter. So Trash enclosure up to our northwest here. That's a brick facility that matches the building with steel and Trex doors on them, so they're stout. Down in the southeast corner, this is an underground detention area that I mentioned earlier, that we've served this entire area as well as the hot property. The underground chambers that are integral as a requirement, but also as part of these, it's very easily to add the water quality chamber to that. So we'll be taking care of our water quality with that as well. One of the bigger issues, and I met with a lady, a couple ladies actually on Monday evening for our neighborhood meeting, and I think she's probably in the audience here. I sent you the email, and I think I'll share them, but my address, wrote down the address probably wrong. So, but I think it's important to say that I attempted, but I'll share what I wrote in that regarding our request to sell beer and wine here. As was mentioned, we're not asking to sell hard liquor. Two of the stores this evening were in the distance, fell within that quarter mile from other competitors, et cetera. So we were okay with those. This is close enough to facilities in the Oak Ridge neighborhood and a future facility that isn't necessarily officially there today, but as we understand the proximity of it for sure. What I wrote is basically the 150-foot requirement is from premises. So that's property line to property line. Oak Ridge, Crocker is about 66 foot wide. I think it's fairly consistent. Matter of fact, 66 foot wide. So that puts us property line to property line 66 foot from premises. But my interpretation of the code is that it would allow my structure, our C-store, or any other retailer selling beer and wine to be 150 foot from a daycare facility, building to building, because we're currently C2 zoning. If complying with the fire code with a brick wall, which we do, assuming that the other building was a brick building, complying with the fire code, you can have a 0 property line. So you can build right on that property line in C2. So the code today would allow 2 structures to be 150 foot from each other. What I had our engineer prepare, let's see if I left it or if I brought it, is, you can go out a little bit. You won't be able to read these. Matter of fact, I've got a couple if I might just pass them around. On here are several different lines running out. Specific, there is the Oak Ridge neighborhood facility, the daycare facility that Eric pointed out in the pictures. There's a parking lot and you saw some playground equipment up the hill. From building to building, that's 326 feet. And then several dimensions along from the other Oak Ridge buildings. We have 192 feet. That's the very closest point from building to building. 207, 323. So 445 from get goes over here, but needless to say, in the context of my discussion about 150 feet, if that in fact would allow buildings to be 150 foot, now it's not this case, they're greater. The distance is greater than that. So if the intent of the code will allow that, are we not then complying with the spirit of it? The property line, Mr. Hott's northwest, if you will, property line from our building is 164 feet. Again, over that 150 feet. We estimated if the facility being built, there is a set offset. So if it's 15 feet, we'd add that, if it's 175 or whatever feet from our building at that point. So again, that is why we were so bold to think that you might understand that consideration. We do believe with our focus of our operations towards Keelway, away from the neighborhood, that also adds to that. The daycare facilities that might be the privates are obviously within the homes, central to their internal circulation. The Oak Ridge facility is also focused to the internal circulation of their versus, there's a parking lot down here, but the main entrance is up top here. And then the new facility, of course, will be focused towards Oak Ridge Drive versus Keel Way or versus pointed towards us. So we think operationally, our activity centers are also opposite, if you will, wherever a daycare might be, let alone, I believe the setback of our building is meeting the intent. The uniqueness of having these large parcels with several facilities within them, I think is a bit of a hardship for the discussion. Nonetheless, the code is there. We started this discussion by speaking with the Homes of Oak Ridge, the Oak Ridge neighborhood rather. I believe you have a letter from Terry Caldwell Johnson, the CEO, where the board has voted to support our cause. Specifically written in there is that, and if you don't, I have copies. Okay. The Oak Ridge Neighborhood Board has voted to support us, and specifically discussed in there is this issue.
You have an extra copy? No, I'm talking about received and file.
Yes, I have one in my hand.
Okay. Good job.
I have 2 more copies if anyone doesn't get one. With that, I think I'm addressing the issues that were discussed. Obviously, I'd appreciate your consideration and positive vote. I am here to answer questions.
Great.
You said you've been working on this for a while, and so you've obviously driven down Keogh in rush hour, both in the morning and in the evening, and so you understand the dire need for a traffic signal at Oak Ridge or Crocker or whatever the name of that street is. Are you requesting one?
I'm not requesting one. I'll tell you this, and not to be forward, just to say that we're not fighting one either. Stoplights actually help us because people stop and tend to sit there and make a decision to turn in. However, we're here to comply. We're not here to ask staff not to make us do something, but we're definitely here to comply with whatever the staff, the traffic engineers would have us do. I'm definitely not here to argue against it. I'm not, well, you know, I guess I haven't been asked to go down that avenue, sir.
Well, let me share my experience. My wife has worked at Methodist, I'll call it Methodist still, for 35 years, and so I have had opportunities many times to either take her or pick her up or whatever, so I've traveled down Keogh Way for that entire time. And at Rush, there are people coming from both the residential units up on the hill and the bus station and elsewhere on foot, and traffic that is frightening at that intersection. And the little get and go, it is little, it's way smaller than your store, generates some of that. A lot of people go up the hill to Oak Ridge or whatever, and I think we're nuts if we don't put I think you're nuts for wanting one without a traffic signal, but I think we're nuts to allow one without one. I don't know where it should go, but it's crazy.
CJ, anything? Joanne? No? Any other? Thank you. Nick? I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? In favor of the application, please come forward. Anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? We're going to ask you to line up on the wall, and we're going to ask you to sign in if we've got a large group here. So we need you to print your name on the sheet that Eric has, and
Hi, my name's Lori Coltrane, 1785 Emma.
You already signed in, right, Lori?
I did sign in. I understand that your time's valuable. My study group and I have discussed this dilemma, and I'm just here to kind of explain our concerns. I'm opposed to the come and go, or any other convenience store for that matter, going in on this property. There's already a convenience store, and I've heard that it's grandfathered in, so we can't get them to quit selling beer and wine, which is unfortunate. I know every one of you, as well as I, would like the KOA thoroughfare to be fixed up, looking good, but do we really have to do it by changing the codes that have been instilled and letting businesses go in so close to our children selling beer and wine? My friends and I have been keeping up with this matter via Channel 7 internet. We've seen this matter on the Board of Adjustment back in July. And at that meeting, it looked as though they may have opposed it. That didn't happen. There's an ordinance put into place keeping gas stations like that have come and go from building too close to our daycares, churches, parks. The ordinance is 150 feet from lot line to lot line, not from building to building. As has been said, there's a daycare 66 feet, one that's going to be built 70 feet, and as I learned today, many 17 private daycares in the homes at Oak Ridge. Come and Go did withdraw, but they did find a loophole, PUD, to change this outcome. They got the city to sell them, just that wee bit of land along the street, to rezone the property from C2 to PUD. This still doesn't change the fact of the distance between child cares and the alcohol and wine sales. This zone change doesn't provide a hardship for Come and Go, as they haven't bought the property yet. The city put this ordinance into effect for a good reason, for our children, grandsons, granddaughters. I'm sure everybody's said beer, wine, cigarettes, not good for you, don't do it. And for them to see it on a daily basis, maybe somebody walking by or purchasing it, they know it's not good because their parents told them so. We're all here to support Des Moines, and I think this change is a selfish one. I'm not saying that Come and Go is a bad gas station. Their stores are nice, well lit, maybe a little too big, overwhelming, but I can't say many bad things about the parents of their store. I'm just here to advocate for the persons that are too shy, maybe don't have the transportation to give their say, or need to work, don't know about this, and maybe just don't want to come forward, be anonymous. I know the Board of Oak Ridge has given their okay for this change, but there's 300 units in the Oak Ridge neighborhood. That's a lot of people, and I'm sure not everyone knows about this Come and Go going in. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But they're not here, as you can see. Also, I think this will open doors for other convenience stores that maybe want to go into a neighborhood like this. They've seen that Come and Go has done it. Why not them? Maybe they can get rezoned to PUD for this change to happen. If the sales of alcohol does become a nuisance and it has to go to the legislator, what happens when they deny the alcohol sales the beer, the wine sales, Come and Go obviously has stated that they cannot have a store without the sales of these items. Are we going to end up with another Osco Drug, a big building that's on the corner of a lot for years? For years, I'm about over. Sitting empty until finally a new drugstore comes in. And this is basically all I have to say. Again, I'm opposed, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please give us your name and address.
My name is Susan Hayes, and I live at 1305 Essex Street. And I've been a teacher at Apple Tree General Center for 25 years, and I do not agree to have alcohol sold that close to children. I have worked there for a long time with kids, and I don't think or cigarettes or anything like that should be close to children. And I'm a mother of my own, and I'm going to be a grandma soon, and I don't agree with that. I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
Please give us your name and address.
My name is Richard Rouge. I live at 1836th Street, and I have never consumed any alcohol of any kind ever, and I don't think that it should be sold anywhere near little kids will be constantly during the day. And I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Give us your name and address.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Enos, and I live at 1305 Ascension Street. And I'm a student at AIB College studying in daycare. I am against the Come and Go building on Keel Way. I'm opposed to it.
Thank you. Please give us your name and address.
My name is Damian Baker. I live at 4150 Maple Street. I'm very opposed to alcohol being sold to anywhere near kids. I have 3 of my own, and alcohol is just a disaster. I mean, you know, drunk drivers can pull out in the middle, hit some kid. You know, think about it if that was your kid. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Please give us your name and address.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Damon, and I live at 4246 26th Street, and I am against this zone change because the daycares are too close to the Come and Go.
Thank you. Please give us your name and address.
My name is Amanda Erickson. I live at 2508 Watchers Avenue in Des Moines. I am opposed to Come and Go being built very close to daycares because my family owns a daycare, and I think they would not like somewhere selling alcohol that close, like pretty much in the backyard of their daycare with all the kids around. Thank you.
Please give us your name and address.
Heather Jenkins, 423 East Watrous. I am opposed to the Come and Go going up so close to daycares due to the fact that the alcohol and plus all the traffic that's going to be going in and out of there. Keel Way is a very busy street, and I know kids run out into parking lots, and that'll just create more traffic.
Thank you. Please give us your name and address.
Derek Gord, 2422 Drake Park, President, Drake Neighborhood Association. You know, I wasn't going to come up and speak on this. I think that Come and Go has been a great corporate citizen, but listening to everybody, I actually was here for the city council meeting where this was originally discussed as a C2, where they wanted to do the, get the liquor license that was denied. I guess I'm not so much opposed because I do believe that Come and Go has been a great corporate partner to us on their building or their convenience store at 22nd and University. I would just urge extreme caution on this. There are several liquor stores, several places selling beer and alcohol in this area. I mean, I know that aside from what the residents have said, there are deep concerns about, this building, about the structure. And I do know that once you allow it in, our experience on 22nd and Forest Avenue has shown us, or 21st anyways, has shown us that once you have alcohol in and you have a problem, it's very, very hard to fix that issue, if not impossible. And I would just, I'm not specifically opposed. This isn't something where the Drake neighborhood has taken an opinion on this. Although probably if something happens, they'll say it happened near the Drake neighborhood. But we do have, I would just remind everybody that aside from the Get and Go, you do have a liquor store that's right on the other side at Keogh. And then you have one pretty much across MLK at 2100. And then you have the other Come and Go that's there on 22nd and University. So you would actually just have a large concentration of, just even at beer and wine, you'd have a large concentration in a few block area of beer and wine sales. And I wonder if that would not be slightly coincidental. So just urge caution, otherwise not specifically opposed to it. But thank you.
Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Nick, you need some rebuttal time.
Well, I think it's, again, Nick Hatfield, 64 on Westtown Parkway, West Des Moines, Come and Go. I'm not sure what to rebut. I mean, it's quite clear that the folks who spoke are frankly against the alcohol sales. Whether I think the distance is secondary to the opposition of it. However, the distance factor is here. The reason we're at this board today is because, as you well know, this has been a topic of discussion over the past couple of years, quite frequently. You've probably been discussed it amongst yourselves at this board level often, and definitely the council has. And there's been a few different amendments to the laws. So we thought it very germane to go through this process, to go past those decision makers, have this before those decision makers whom have had a part of the process of figuring out what this appropriate code is. That's why we're here, without a doubt. For the reasons I stated earlier, I think it's clear that what can be done within the code today. And I mean that to say that this thing has been beat and rediscussed and whatever appropriate dimension assigned to this code today has been discussed at length. And frankly, it allows what I've described as, it does describe parcel to parcel, for sure. And C2 zoning for sure allows zero lot line construction. It is what it is. The context of that is accurate, and from our operations standpoint, if we thought we were going to cause a problem, yeah, we're in it for a profit, for sure. That's what we do for our business. We sell items. We compete with every grocery store in town. We compete with every drugstore or 15,000 square foot convenience store, frankly. Everything, anyone who sells the items that we have in our store, which is about everybody, gas pumps or not, those are our competitors. It was stated, we do have to have these items in our stores to run an accurate business model. It is critical. We've not asked for the liquor. That's a secondary issue and a secondary item to us. However, the beer and wine sales are, frankly, to use the term part and parcel, they're part and parcel to that business. If I didn't believe there was a reasonable interpretation of the code that allowed me to stand here straight-faced and honestly giving it to you, I wouldn't stand here. And I don't believe that the folks I work for would ask me to stand here, frankly. We don't believe we're going to cause that negative. We have a very high standard of operations. We have a high standard of training for all of our employees. We self-sting. We're doing above and beyond, if you will, on our ability to make sure that we're selling to the appropriate people. Make sure what that means is not minors, making sure that we're not selling to those that shouldn't be sold to, otherwise, even if they're of legal age. whether it be overserved, et cetera. We're doing our part. The greater societal issues, I can't really address those. However, I do believe in the context of the zoning code that we're meeting the intent of that. So, thank you.
Nick, I have a question. If you didn't have this extra abandoned piece, you wouldn't have enough for PUD, is that right?
That is correct.
Any other questions? Thank you. Eric, you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, since a number of people spoke, this will be set regardless of the recommendation of Plan and Zoning Commission for September 9th at the City Council. So.
Okay. You get that? Mike?
Just a couple of other things before there's any motion made or hearing closed. I just wanted to note some of the testimony that was given. Just to clarify, under the state code, owners of property are who are notified under state code. So I know it's maybe difficult to understand why individual renters may not have been notified, but the state code does specify that it's owners of property, so that is who we notified. The second point I want to make was, I believe Mr. Gord had stated that there had been a council meeting. I think he was referring to the Board of Adjustment, and he'd indicated it had been denied. I don't believe the Board of Adjustment denied the app. It was withdrawn.
No, they withdrew it, yes.
It was withdrawn, so
Continued,
there was
yeah.
no action taken by the board on that application. And then finally, just to, I made a note during Mr. Heffill's comments about kind of legislative versus Board of Adjustment review. And just again, to clarify, prior to it going to the Board of Adjustment, we did get a lot of calls from residents, and there was frustration about the fact that you could not contact Board of Adjustment members outside of a hearing. Everything had to be at the hearing itself during the afternoon. We talk about people maybe not being able to come to a meeting because of work that's in the middle of the day. We heard a lot of frustration about not being able to have any contact outside of a hearing. When you're asking about what benefits there are to a PUD, it is a legislative process. So there's a hearing tonight where a recommendation is made, and there's another hearing in front of the council, and citizens as well as applicants are allowed to contact Planning Commission. They're able to contact council and share their concerns, and also participate in the public hearing process on those things. They're not just limited to one hearing in front of the board and only testimony at that meeting. Final point on that is just that the other part of the Board of Adjustment is not only can they not be contacted outside the meeting, but any decision they make is only appealable in district court. So had the neighbors disagreed with the board's decision, they would have had to have gone to district court to get that decision changed. Not saying the board would have approved or denied the request, but if there had been disagreement, it would have been a district court decision on whether or not to allow alcohol sales at that location. So by keeping it in a legislative process, the decision-making really is, in this instance, being made by the people who made the rules, and may, in this instance, be a more appropriate mechanism for review of that. Thank you.
The other thing is there was some confusion as to what legislative referred to. It, in the language of we're recommending, that's for the city council's legislative action, not the state legislature's legislative action.
Okay, thank you. Have a motion? Jack, actually, we've got to break this kind of out if you're going to move it. We have A, B, C, and D, and council, can we put C and D together, rezone the property, improve the plan? Or do we need to take those separately?
I think you can put them together.
Okay. All right, so A would be to vacate irregular segment. And the reason why that needs to be done, frankly, is because without that irregular segment, we can't decide on a PUD because there's not enough land there for a PUD. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so is there a motion on that? Ted's moving it. All right. And on A, the recommendation is to approve to vacate. Any questions, any discussion? Jack, you have something?
Just a thought that vacating the property makes no sense without the rest of it.
Agreed.
And taking them separately is
But it's kind
a
of
little awkward.
The chicken or the egg theory. You know, you gotta have the vacated spot first of all before we can even take up the PUD. So that's kind of the way
I get it.
Okay. Any discussion?
On A.
On A. All those in favor of vacating the irregular segment for this particular property, please signify by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. You got it, Kathy? Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody put your hands up. We got to make sure. You got them, Kathy? All right.
Is that moot,
Fails.
B, C, and D?
Yeah. No, 5-4.
5 against.
That fails, and I think the rest makes the rest of it, I'm going to defer to council, but I think it makes the rest of it moot.
If the commission is concerned that if the council were to disagree with your recommendation, do you have any recommendation on the zoning? Or do you care to make any motion regarding zoning?
Anybody have any comments? I'm going to go around and just ask people if they've got comments so that we can at least forward those comments on to council. Greg, do you have anything?
Sure. I think it's premature if we're working on a streetscape for Keogh Way to give up right-of-way along Keogh before we know what it is. I'm intimately familiar with how important space is in a streetscape, and I think we're just premature. Since I really wasn't hearing positive comments about whether or not that signal would go in, and I realized there would still be time and council can ask for that, I couldn't say yes to this without knowing that that was going to be a signalized intersection. And because I don't know that, I think we're, again, premature. So there we go.
Jack, do you have anything?
Defer to Greg on those comments. I had a kind of a question, though. Let's say the elusive Whole Foods came in, picked up a couple medical office buildings, an ambulance garage, and a Get and Go, and put a store in there and sold liquor, wine, and beer. They're kind of close to a daycare center. Would that be restricted?
The grocery store would be exempt from the sale or from the separation requirements.
So it's the C store entity that creates this situation.
Yes, under C2 zoning.
And then I wondered, Mike, if you could the staff recommendation is lengthy, but I think you get to the point where you recommend approval of A, B, C, and D. Help us wrap our head around how city staff accommodated the property line to property line 150-foot situation. And then there's a second question there, property line to property line, and I understand it's a grandfather situation, but how far is Get and Go from the daycare property?
Eric, I don't know if you have the distance from the existing Get and Go.
I don't, without using like a measurement tool, but the right-of-way difference is 66 feet uniformly along that segment of street. So it would probably be the same 66 feet if there was any 2 points that were parallel.
Well, it looks like you've got to go across a parking lot that you've told us is a principal group, I think, parking lot to get to that daycare center, and I'm trying to figure out from the Get and Go property line, which would be its west border.
It would be longer than, I apologize. It's a little bit offset to the east. So you see this, where my pen is the western boundary of the Get and Go property.
Is there one here?
So if you took that point perpendicular across the street to where
Where's the
basically
daycare center?
He's asking the separation from get and go to the daycare
Oh,
center.
get and go to the daycare.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to ask. Is that, today, is
This
that
would be a-
inside the 150 feet property line to property line?
It
just
is
'cause
not
it's-
inside the 150, but it would exceed the 75, which was the standard at the time it was approved.
Does everybody understand the point I'm making? Is that get and go 150 feet from a daycare center?
No.
Is it more than 150 feet from a daycare center? Yes? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not more than, it's less than 150 feet, but it's more than 75.
So currently beer and wine being sold less than 150 feet from the daycare center that we're talking about.
That's correct.
Okay?
Back to your question about
Thanks.
how did we look at that distance? The staff has regularly recommended against variances to the separation distance that was established by council at the Board of Adjustment level on the basis that as a quasi-judicial board and us trying to change the wording of the code, it does say parcel to parcel. And when you're dealing with a quasi-judicial entity and making determinations to waive how an interpretation is made on the code, that opens a lot of potential ramifications, in our opinion. We believe that the appropriate way to consider that really would be through a PUD process, a legislative process, again, with the people who made the rules making a decision of whether or not, in this instance, to waive a requirement. And the PUD is the appropriate remedy. In this instance, based on the size of the parcels where the residential is located adjacent to this, is quite different than some of the other locations where we've had board cases on. Size of the parcel, the actual distance between structures this site has unique characteristics that we thought a PUD was a better way of approaching the request.
And I'm not saying it's not a better way. I'm trying to figure out how, if we're on a literal interpretation and the court's looking at 150 feet as 150 feet property to property, we get through the city planning staff with less than the 150 feet and say that's okay.
There's two things. One, a PUD allows flexibility of zoning regulations, which that 150-foot separation is a zoning regulation. And the Board of Adjustment review is precluded in a planned unit development. They have no authority over a planned unit development. So it absolutely has to be a legislative decision.
I see.
And writing individual zoning for a specific property is what a PUD would do.
Thank you. Now, what's going on at Owen Christ across the street? Seems like it isn't near as active as it once was back in the day.
I'm not aware of any proposals on the site, but I know that since the announcement about Keough Streetscape and Principal's expansion, there's been numerous parties coming in inquiring about redevelopment along the corridor.
My suggestion is simple, and that is that the template be moved across the street, which would solve all the 150-foot parameters, but you got to get a willing seller.
Joanne?
I have just a comment. I like the proposal, but I, like Jack, would like to see it across the street. And these folks know their neighborhood, and they don't want this here. So to me, I just can't go against the neighbors in this situation because they have strong reasons for objecting.
Frank?
For me, whether it's 66 feet or 150 feet or across the street, it's relative. I mean, it's still right there. So, you know, I personally am not going to get hung up in whether it's that dimension or a different dimension. If you can walk across the street and get it and you want it, that's what you're going to do. And I look at this more as for me, I don't think there should be I liked where you're kind of going, that that a grocery store could move in here and could sell beer and wine and liquor. And Mike, is it true that a restaurant could go on this site and sell?
Yeah, a restaurant would be allowed to go on the property and have on-premise consumption, correct?
So my thought with that is that, you know, I live in a Des Moines neighborhood as well, and my wife and I walk down to places to buy alcohol or have, you know, dinner and so forth. I would have been more interested in this getting to a point, which is why I voted in favor of the vacation of the piece of property, of sort of a higher level or a better discussion about the maintenance, the management, sort of things that would give the city or staff, city, I guess, the ability to enforce what the concern, or enforce things to help the concerns that citizens may have or those living around here. I think just the idea of just because it's a C-store, it's out, doesn't make sense to me. You're just sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That doesn't make sense to me. So.
Just to address one of your comments about the performance or operation, the staff rec did include some provisions which allowed for, if there were problems in the future, to bring the request back. That is directly reflective of some of the most recent changes that were made to the rules that applied to sale of liquor in general across the city. I think Mr. Gord had mentioned that 22nd and Forest had been a problem site in the past. That use was established prior to these most recent changes. Those changes were made in response to situations like 22nd and Forest. And our hope is that with those changes, we required by December 31st of this year compliance with the new regulations. So quite honestly, it's our belief that problems like 22nd and Forest, we actually have a greater opportunity after the 31st of this year to enforce some greater management or operational standards on the property. But on this zoning as a PUD, that was one of the, even though we were recommending ultimately a relief to the separation distance, we were still recommending that those kind of operational standards be applied to this site, and the ability to bring that back if it did become a problem was one of them.
Will? I'd like to defer to the representative from the from Come and Go, who testified to us this evening that Keo Way is wide open for redevelopment. I think that's true. This is a very dense and a very compact area, and it needs a comprehensive plan to make it all work. And my point is to underline what Mr. Jones said, that I think a comprehensive approach is the way to go on this, and I urge the city to take that route.
Shirley.
Thank you, Will, for those comments, because you just kind of took exactly what I was thinking right out of my head. I think the key that we're missing here is the idea of a comprehensive plan, and recognizing that Come and Go is a good corporate neighborhood. You know, you get along and the things look nice and everybody talks about how good these things are, but I think we have to reflect back to a couple of comments that I think Joanne alluded to and that CJ alluded to, that sometimes within our city we have residential areas that need something more than just going with that thought of, does it follow the code? Does it meet this need or that one? And so while I give Come and Go a lot of accolades for what they are doing in our city, and I certainly give our Des Moines staff that does all of this planning work, I just think it's incredible the amount of work that they put into it to make it work. There are some exceptions, and I think in some of our residential commercial areas, there are exceptions to that. And so as I listened and I've heard many things even before tonight, I'm just not comfortable in supporting that on the Keogh Way exit there. And then what Greg was talking about as far as that street, I travel Keogh Way all the time. This evening when I was coming down here for this meeting, there at Oak Ridge, Keogh and Crocker, if I hadn't been watching, I would have been smashed because a guy just came right across there. And so I'm a firm believer that we need to do something with a traffic light there. It is a very dangerous intersection there. And so I just think we need to look at it, try to find something comprehensive that's going to work better for the corporate people as well as the residents.
Tim?
First of all, I want to applaud the people that came down and spoke. It's passionate, and it was about children, and I think we all appreciate that. I'm not going to let it skew my opinion for the fact most of the addresses I heard were from other areas of the city and not this neighborhood. The letter we got from the neighborhood supported this, even though they were a board, I believe were elected to represent those neighbors. Therefore, they're excited about it. As far as retailers go, they must stay competitive, and I know that there are competitors, at least one, that has plenty of opportunity to invest in that area for many years, and I don't think they have. And I think that this would be a great shot in the arm for this particular corridor. Greg mentioned that this is going to be streetscaping, and I'm sure that Come and Go would be more than willing to participate in whatever comes that direction. And with that being said, I just think I'd like to hear a new motion, or hope to get another motion before we leave here tonight.
Chairman, I believe we should not only have another motion on the vacation part of this action item, but we should also split it out for B, C, and D and vote right up or down.
There was a motion on A.
There was a motion.
A was already taken care
failed.
of. That motion failed.
But there should be a follow-up motion.
Yeah, and we'll take that up since Ted gets that.
Yeah, I'd like to know a couple of things, but I'll say a few things first. I see it the way Tim does. The neighborhood did support this. There's always exceptions in support and opposition, but I think that had we maybe had some language in this relative to complying with the future streetscape plan as that comes, that and with Come and Go's agreement on that it might have changed a couple of votes. I think that I guess I feel like I'd sure like to do it over. I'd like to send it back to staff. I'd like to ask that it be continued so that they could get some of that language in there. I agree about the signal. I think different applicants approach these kinds of things differently. It seems to me that Come and Go's corporate position on this is not to ask for more than they think they should. I bet they'd really like to have a signal there. I don't know, occasionally Des Moines has a track record of saying if you want a signal, you got to pay for it. So that may be why they don't ask for one. But if some of that language could get in this, I think it might change a couple of votes. The beer and wine sales are legal in Des Moines, and I do understand the separation and why they're talking about building to building versus lot line to lot line. The PUD is something that gets employed in Des Moines all the time, and frankly, I've seen several examples of PUDs giving the city more longer-term control over what happens to a project than our standard zoning. So we're not giving up control with PUDs. In my opinion, we're getting more. So I don't know if it's too late because we separated that out and voted to deny. I think if we could get some different language in there and get Come and Go to agree to it, I'd like a do-over, please.
Dan, could I ask a procedural question?
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Is it true that one of those who voted against it could ask for a re-vote, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's correct. You could ask for a recall, and that's one of the things we could do. One of the things that's been suggested by council is that we go ahead and vote on the issue of whether or not we would rezone the property. It would only be suggestive to council. It wouldn't be anything more, because obviously without a PUD, we don't have that.
I forgot to ask the question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do we still have a quorum?
Yeah, we still have a quorum. We still have a quorum. She'll be back? Okay. Good 9.
Yeah, 8 is a quorum. 9.
Nice. You know, Jackie's back. So it's kind of, you know, truthfully, I'm going to ask for a motion to see whether or not we want to go ahead and take up the issue of the rezoning. If you want to ask for a recall on the issue
I would like to ask for a recall on item 1, because I will change my vote subject to some other language we stick in for the streetscape right-of-way and the traffic signalization, which I think we can do, which I don't think staff wrote strongly enough. But my fear is that we might have to get Come and Go's approval for that, and once we turn it backwards, we can't go back again.
That's correct.
And so I have a certain fear of that.
That's correct. And I think, and I hadn't had a chance to talk yet, and I do want to do that. I agree with Greg entirely. I think it's premature. You know, it's kind of like the old saying. I mean, people have been on the street before, and you go down and they tear the street up, and then they run pipes into the street and they put pavement on. And then 6 weeks later, somebody else comes and tears the street up, and they have to repave it. It just doesn't make sense to me, and that's kind of what I think Greg is saying. I could be wrong, but it doesn't make sense to me that we auction off a piece of property only to come back and say, oh, we needed that King's X, that we want it back again. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
But Dan, maybe there's some way that, I mean, the harsh reality is they have gerrymandered this to meet the 2-acre minimum by including the neighbor. They're going to redo the front, but not part of the building, and we're swiping some of the right-of-way. So it's a blatant gerrymandering to get the 2 acres. But if they don't need that space out in the street and would be willing to give it back as part of the streetscape, again, I didn't hear that, but that goes back to what Ted said. That would get rid of that fear for me and perhaps others. And the signalization is also an easy one. But for me, we didn't have enough information about it. And again, being fearful that here we go, and this was a way for it to turn out to be a negative vote, and then the council really has to think about it. Well, that's really not the right way to do it, but here we are.
Well, and I would agree with you, except that somebody's going to have to figure this out.
Yes.
And we don't have the authority, truthfully, we're an advisory body. Right. We don't have the authority to figure it out. I mean, I think it's council's responsibility to figure out what you want to do with that streetscape and get it taken care of. And they're the only ones that can do that, frankly, because even traffic and transportation, although they could send recommendations to council, they can't do it either.
Well, here's what we can do, is we can continue it. And I mean, if we vote to the redo, we could vote to continue it. I don't know if it's vacate the original vote, whatever the language is. I am not an attorney. But if we continue it, give staff some time to work with Come and Go on what they would be willing to do relative to the future streetscape. There was also a point made that there is no plan for this. There is a plan for this. There's a downtown overlay district that exists, and but there is a streetscape coming for for Keogh, and there's good stuff coming, and this is the front end of the good stuff, in my opinion. So, I think we ought to give it another chance at the staff.
You want to continue? Well, maybe we ought to get Nick up here.
Can we ask you a question about, you see where we are. We all want to see something happen in a positive way, but we're kind of stuck. So just unpack your thoughts for a second.
I've been working on a $4 million investment for a year, and I'm still kicking my toes on the curb. So I hear you, and I think it's easily moved forward if we can focus on what exactly the issues are. I hear your traffic issue. I hear the need or the lack thereof. We're not the first PUD, by the way, that's needed a little extra ground. So I just don't want to be.
And frankly, that's not the point. The point is we don't want, and I brought this up earlier. I'm concerned about what happens on Keogh Way if you've got a place in there and you don't want any of your clients hurt as a result of having.
100%. Yes, and everything that's been presented, I think I can come to some center if it were presented for me to agree to. I think we can get somewhere, to be short with it.
So you would prefer not to continue, but would prefer some way for us to send it on to council, and you would work something out beyond us?
I truly, I don't want to take you out of context. I'm not sure. What I would like to do is continue moving forward. If there were a way to make you all comfortable with our intentions. I think you bring up points that we don't necessarily disagree with. It's just.
If I could make a couple of suggestions. One would be on the request of the vacation, if it's the intent of the commission to clarify their vote on that as to their concerns about the streetscape, et cetera, you could make a motion to reconsider and a follow-up motion with conditions that you think need to be addressed in order for a vacation to proceed. That would be one option. Another option would be to leave the motion just as was made on A and just follow up with a motion on B, C, and D and state what you think needs to be addressed. Traffic signal, streetscape, things like that.
Right.
What does our current motion mean for city council vote?
6/7 vote.
On a vacation, no 6/7 vote is required by the council.
But we didn't vote on the rest.
Right.
So that is a denial?
No, it's nothing, but we could certainly vote on the rest. That's the other suggestion.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would not trigger a 6/7 vote if you fail to make a recommendation. So.
Well, we have to vote on the rest.
Yes.
Even though right now as it stands, they don't have 2 acres.
Right.
They don't have 2 acres today. It's part of their application. If council approves the vacation.
So they can ignore us.
Right.
They could, that's why I'm suggesting if you have a follow-up motion on the zoning, that would be, I think you've been very clear in the discussion after the motion. Either way, you can reconsider item A or leave it as it stands. There's been adequate discussion about what the concerns were about the vacation. But the zoning itself, I would recommend you make some sort of motion on B, C, and D and add whatever conditions you think are appropriate. You can move to deny it if you want to. If you want to recommend approval with conditions, make a recommendation for approval with conditions.
Well, why don't we go ahead and take up B in either event?
I would like to go back on A. I'd like to reconsider A and have a follow-up motion.
Okay. You understand that? Okay.
Need a vote on the reconsideration.
We're going to do that. So everybody understands the request is for reconsideration, and it's by somebody who voted in favor of or against the approval. So we're going to go ahead and reconsider that. Once again, it's necessary, as we said before, for them to have a PUD, enough room for a PUD. But understand, we're an advisory body. We are not the council. The council is the one that would have the ultimate responsibility for that. Jack, did you?
So has Greg made a motion to rescind the prior vote on
No,
Part
he's
A?
made a motion for reconsideration, which he's entitled to do.
Well, rescind, well, okay, we're talking technical terms.
Yeah,
We're going to
I
reconsider it because it's going to come up with different legs.
Right.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. Same thing. All right, so all those in favor of approval of vacation of,
Motion to reconsider.
Reconsider first.
Motion to reconsider.
oh, right, okay, that's right. I'm getting out of order. All those in favor of the motion to reconsider, please signify by raising your right hand. What that means, okay. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4.
6-4.
6-4. Wait a minute. Opposed
Opposed
would be
was
Will,
Will,
myself.
Dan, Jackie, Joanne.
Okay. All right. 6-4. So the reconsideration is on.
Any motion,
It's on the table.
any motion for item A?
I have a revised motion for A,
All right.
that whatever right-of-way we give up in A, Come and Go would agree not to, they would allow that space to be used for any future streetscape use by the city. That makes sense? Ed and everybody?
Without remuneration.
So they wouldn't put anything in there. We've all agreed that they're doing it to get the 2 acres, but they would allow a sidewalk edge or a brick edge or a light pole or something that would have to go in back in that space.
Okay. Now, the question I have for Nick, is that all right with you guys?
Yes, sir, it's quite typical to provide a sidewalk easement, public use easement, some other legal
All right.
tool.
All right. All those in favor of, well, first of all, is there any discussion? Tim, do you have anything?
I just want to know if you could add a street light to the.
It'd be anything. Street lights, whatever.
The traffic signals?
That'd
Oh,
be a
traffic
PUD.
signal.
That would be a PUD
I
issue.
think the traffic signals are a separate thing from that right-of-way vacation.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. 3 in opposition. Got it, Will.
Will, Jackie, Joanne.
We go so fast. I'm glad I'm not Kathy. She does yeoman duty here. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead then, and I need a motion on B, whether or not it's in conformance with the 2020 Community Character Plan, and staff indicates that they believe it is. We have a motion? So moved. Okay, Jack's got it. Got it? All right. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? Just
8-2.
Just 2. You're in favor?
But I'm not,
8-2.
I mean, isn't this,
The question is whether or not it's in conformance with the community character plan. And it,
and it is.
okay, by acclamation. Okay. All right. Now, the next question is to approve the requested PUD subject to recommended revisions to the conceptual plan. And I think we can take C and D together, is what you indicated, right, Council? All right. And then
Any
unless
additional
somebody wants to
conditions?
split out. Does somebody want it split out because one is approval of the proposed conceptual plan, and the other one recommends approval from PUD to conceptual plan. So is there a? You want to split it, or you want to keep it? We'll split it. Okay, let's split it. Is there a motion? Recommendation is to approve. Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, when we vote, we are voting on a specific PUD or any old PUD.
PUD zoning. The concept plan would be where you would,
Agree to the PUD zone.
any conditions on a site-specific plan. So if you think it's appropriate that it could be zone planned unit development, that's really the question on this. Follow-up motion on D would be the concept plan in front of
Concept
you
plan
with
itself.
any additional conditions that you think are appropriate.
Okay? All right, all those in favor of the PUD, please signify by raising your right hand. All right, that's by acclamation as well, Kathy. Okay? All right, then the next one is, and I want everybody to look through because there are a number of revisions. If there's any changes we need to make, I want to give everybody an opportunity to make some changes, but recommends approval of the conceptual plan. Is there a motion? Jack, you going to move that one too? Yeah, he does. Jack's going to move.
Just to clarify, Mr. Holmes, do you believe that there needs to be any discussion about a possible traffic signal?
Yes, he does.
Well, that's why I was wanting everybody to read through it. So if we got,
I don't know how strongly we need to word it, but consideration needs to be made for a signalization of that intersection.
Mr. Chair, in the past, I think we've put language in that would say that they would agree to a traffic signal, participation in their fair share of a signal if warranted. And when we say if warranted, that's based on the regulations that are required to allow a signal, so.
we're going to do that. Once again, Nick, what's your thoughts on a signal?
Worded as such that Eric worded it, yes. Our fair share, yes, sir.
Okay. Everybody okay?
That would be number 5 in this list of.
Right. And I think Mike's over here. No, he's not. 5 would be
Yep, I got it.
their fair share of it.
Move staff. So the 4 listed conditions plus a condition that says that the applicant would have to participate in their fair share of a signal if it's warranted.
Right.
And then, were there any other conditions? Right now, the motion on the table would allow sale of alcohol on the premises. Are there any friendly amendments to beer and wine?
Beer and wine.
As proposed.
So I have a question.
Right, go ahead.
Question for the board. I mean, I think I've heard that there are sort of 3 issues that the board has. 1 is the streetscape, 2 is the light, and 3 is the alcohol. Is that, hopefully that's sort of what I've heard.
That's what Mike's really talking about.
My concern centers more around the alcohol, and I wish I had a better feel for, and Mike, I appreciate what you were saying about the bar by the Drake neighborhood. You know, this number 3 lays out these 4 sort of, or not sort of, but these 4 additional requirements. And I sort of feel like it'd be fair to read those for the citizens that are here, have an opportunity to sort of talk about those, because that's really, in my mind, the crux of the conversation here.
Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and do that. There are 4 provisions, so everybody understands. There are 4 provisions. I'm not going to read the first 3. The first one is a revision to the canopy design. The second one is, I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, yeah. The second one's revision to locations of outdoor and seasonal display. I don't think those are major issues for either one of you. The third one is revision to extension of the landscape theme. I don't know that that's a major problem. Number 4 is, I think, what we're talking about here and what Greg's alluding to, and I think some of the other people have as well. And that's increase minimum building setback to 25 feet. Any sale of wine or beer shall be in accordance with a proper license obtained through the office of the city clerk as approved by the city council. So in other words, it would be a wine and beer license that would have to be approved by council itself. Then C would be any sale of liquor, wine, and or beer is subject to any parking area provided for use of customers of the business shall be illuminated at an intensity of at least 1 foot candle of light of parking surface at all times. That's obviously to give a lot more illumination. The entire site shall be landscaped and illuminated so as to minimize hiding places for possible criminal activity. And then number 2 is the business, yeah, that's right. The business shall comply with Article 4 of Chapter 42 of the City Code pertaining to noise control. That's coming and going of traffic. The business shall have no outside speakers or amplified sound, so there won't be any music being played except when used in accordance or in compliance with a Type E sound permit. And then any business shall comply with the following requirements. Have no more than one employee on.
Have more than.
Have more, I'm sorry, thank you. Have more than one employee on duty at all times. The business is open to the public. Obviously, it has to do with the alcohol sales. Conspicuously post 24-hour contact information for a manager or owner of the business near main public entrances. Institute a strict no loitering policy, conspicuously posted one or more no loitering signs, and cooperate with the police in addressing loitering on the premises. Not dispense alcoholic beverages from a drive-through or exterior window, so they'd have to come into the C-store in order to buy alcohol. Litter and trash receptacles shall be located at convenient locations inside and outside the premises, and operators of such business shall remove all trash and debris from the premises and adjoining public areas on a daily basis. And then D, which is really significant here, is the PUD conceptual plan shall be subject to a legislative amendment to preclude the sale of wine and beer if zoning enforcement officer determines that the operation of the business becomes a nuisance or exhibits a pattern of violating the conditions of approval. Everybody understand that?
If I could clarify, on 4C, it does reference sale of liquor. Strike that.
Would be buying
It'd
wine.
be any sale of beer and wine would be subject to those items that you read.
So I can tell us, Mike, about the last 4D,
Mm-hmm.
the nuts and bolts of this enforcement thing. How is this different than where we are day to day?
It actually would not be any different. Right now, the code allows us to take it back to the Board of Adjustment if there's problems. Since this is a PUD, it would have to come back through the P&Z and council. So, same purpose, different process, based on the zoning.
Everybody
So,
on the same page? Do we have any corrections or additions or changes?
I have no corrections or additions, but I have a comment. We've been talking about many issues, and I don't mean to be patronizing, but I think most of what we've been talking about for the benefit of those here in the room and on cable are quite esoteric. And Greg is absolutely right on my left that the real concern has been the sale and dispensing of beer and wine. And we are back to the original question, in my mind, of the original question before us. And in my opinion, it's just too close to too many kids.
And number D is almost the crux of if these other issues are addressed, but it still comes down to we have to wait for a nuisance, something to say that this is a nuisance, then why are we affirming before we go to, this obstacle? And I almost feel like if I had lived in the 70s, I would have been a conscientious objector because I just can't support anything that would promote something that could be a nuisance.
There's a couple ways we could handle this, and I don't know how we want to do it. We could just take up the regular motion and see what happens. We could, however, take up the regular motion, see what happens, and then bring it back with no alcohol, wine or beer sales at all.
Well, isn't there a motion right now?
Well, there's a motion right now for staff, which is the recommendations we just read over.
But I thought I heard at
there's-
least one amendment.
With that amendment.
What was the amendment again? I'd like to hear that.
That was that there would be a fair share contribution by Come and Go if a signal is warranted.
And did I hear someone talk about an amendment about the strip of land, or was that in the previous one? That it could go, that it would be used?
Yeah, it could
I'm
be.
sorry,
yeah, it
confusing
could
that.
be
All right,
used
so
for
that's already
streetscape.
there.
Yeah. No,
I'm clearer
well,
now,
I don't know.
sorry.
I don't think so. All right.
I wouldn't mind just sort of just restating what I said earlier. You know, I'd be interested in anyone on the board. I thoroughly respect Will's opinion and anyone else's that just says, too close to kids, no alcohol, period. I respect that opinion. Myself, I'd be interested if someone has under 3, we have an A, B, C, D, if there's an E, F, G, you know, again, I go back to the point that I believe in, and that's that if this was a grocery store or a restaurant or some other type of use, we could have alcohol here. And the fact, just because it's a C store and we've had some bad experiences in the past, doesn't mean, in my mind, all C stores should never ever be able to do this within, you know, these amount of feet. That doesn't make sense to me. I would rather see better regulation and an opportunity to enforce that as a way of curbing that type of behavior or those type of issues, as opposed to just throwing them all out.
Okay, now the question becomes, what suggestions do you have?
That's where I started with, and I realize it's getting rather late, but if there were specific comments from those and you know, that have come to speak that were very specific about, boy, if we could have this, but if the opinion is, and sorry to call you out, but like Will, that just forget it, never ever, you know, I'm still interested in that. And
See,
so,
I guess what I've heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, what I've heard is that they are saying no alcohol. Period.
Okay.
So what I might suggest is, unless there's a request for another friendly amendment, that you at least take an action on the motion that's on the table.
Yeah.
Let's see where that goes, and then if there needs to be a follow-up, take a follow-up.
Okay, are we good? All right. Any further discussion at all? Seeing none. All those in favor of staff's recommendations with respect to
As amended.
as amended, right, as amended.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
Is this letter from the Oak Ridge Board part of the...
It's been received and filed. I asked for that.
Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, that's all right. All those in favor of staff's recommendation with respect to the PUD, please signify by raising.
As amended.
As amended. Okay, as amended, please signify by raising your right hand.
D.
D.
D, that's D. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Opposed, same sign. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's dead. Fails. You have to have 50, more than 50%. Fails. Okay, I'm gonna ask for another recommendation with respect to alcohol, that there be no alcohol permitted.
Can anyone make, you're asking for it?
I'm asking for a new motion.
Failed, so we have to have a new motion.
New motion.
I would move the approval of C, is there a D that we're working on, without the provision for beer or wine or liquor.
Okay.
Just like Jack's, only subtracting beer and wine.
Correct.
Right.
So, can I ask the chair if you have substantially changed the conditions which the applicant came to seek? Does the applicant get to address the modification?
Yeah, and I was going to ask that. I just want to make sure everybody's on board, first of all. Did you get it? All right. What's going to happen is it's the same motion that we previously had without alcohol. Okay. And Nick, I'm going to ask you to come forward. Will. Go ahead. Come on up, Nick. If we were to remove beer and alcohol sales, beer and wine sales, I guess is what it is, from the premises, would you be in opposition to that? Would this be a deal killer?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll appeal.
No sense in voting.
All right. This one, we're still going to take the vote. I just want to make sure.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. Everybody understand the motion? Everybody understand the position of the applicant?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
If by voting yes to what you're saying, does that preclude that I?
It's still up to council. It's a recommendation.
No, but I mean that I had voted before that I was fine with it in it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't,
It doesn't,
New motion.
it doesn't
It's
preclude that.
just
New
a
motion.
new motion.
Right.
Are we okay?
No, I'm struggling with why we're voting on something the applicant didn't come here
Why are
for.
we voting on it?
Well,
When it's
we're
at
doing-
it's at loggerheads
What we're doing is at least giving council an understanding as to what the position of planning and zoning is.
Otherwise, we haven't sent a motion, Jack, because it was 5-5.
So you think there's a lot of confusion over why the thing came out 5-5?
I don't know that there is, but it should make it pretty doggone clear, don't you
It would
think?
seem to me that we're saying that if the motion is approved, that we're saying the regulations as they stand are appropriate.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the new motion, please signify by raising your right hand.
Restate it again.
Okay, restate it. It's D,
It's
which is,
approval of the C-store with a provision that there be a fair share contribution for a signal if warranted, but no beer and
but
wine
no beer or
sales.
wine sales. All right? All those in favor of that motion, please signify by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
3, 4, 5.
And Greg.
Well, s-
Okay. Opposed, same sign. 1, 2, 3. Are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining? Okay, and with Tim abstaining. You get
The
it?
3 opposed were Irvine.
Ted, Greg, Jack. And Tim's abstaining.
Got it.
Okay,
So much.
you got the cap. All right. Okay,
Again, that would go to the council for a set hearing, Eric, on,
It would go for a set hearing on August 28th. I'm sorry, let's see. But it would be September 9th for the hearing.
September 9th is the hearing. And understand, folks, we're not the final decider on this. The final decision will be made by council. And if you're seriously concerned and remain concerned on this, you need to make sure that you make that council date, because they'll need to hear from you.
The council would set the hearing on August 26th, I apologize, and then September 9th would be the hearing.
And can I just add?
And Nick, just so you understand about the date. The date will go to council. Talk to staff if you've got any questions, all right? All right.
And can I say one
Go ahead,
thing too? Several of you said that you were concerned because residents who live in this area may not have been notified, and it was explained to us why. But if you're aware of any who may have concerns or issues and are able to work with them to understand this issue, I think it would be helpful.
And one of the things, I'd agree with Jackie on that, but one of the things you also need to understand is what Mike has indicated is this is a political process. So whatever you would normally do from a political standpoint, you probably ought to do here. Just a thought. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. We're on 6. Yeah, we're on 6. Okay. Item number 6 is a request from Robert Mulvihill for rezoning a property located at 1139 24th Street. The subject property is owned by Ballard's Glass and Screen Service, and we've got a 3-part. Again, we could take up A and B, A and then B and C. Eric, are you presenting on this
Yes,
one,
Mr.
sir?
Chair, I got to get my.
Robert, just relax, and he's going to make the presentation, then you'll have a right to talk.
Mr. Chair, the subject property of the rezoning request is south of University on 24th Street in the Drake Park neighborhood area. Also the Greater Drake Neighborhood Association area. It's currently a commercial building used for a glass repair and service. The existing building is a commercial type building in its nature, but it's surrounded by residential use. And it's a little bit, as you can see, it's a little bit away from the commercial corridor by a few properties. Now, I should point out that the applicant also owns these 2 residential properties. From that standpoint, the building is in continuous use. It still maintains legal non-conforming rights, even though it's been zoned residential. And fairly recently, there was a downzoning in the Drake neighborhood that's in your staff report, mentioned in your staff report, to a single-family type residential zoning versus what was previous, which was an R3 residential type zoning, and you'll see some other R3 in the area. The Drake neighborhood has gone through a plan process with the city as part of the overall Des Moines 2020 that was brought in front of you and has been adopted by the City Council and the Polk County Board of Supervisors. Based on that plan, staff's interpretation is that we want to avoid commercial zoned areas encroaching further into the neighborhood area. Based on that, we're recommending denial on the basis of the Des Moines 2020 Community Character Plan. We would recommend denial of a change to that. And we do believe it still has viable use as a commercial intended building through a continuous use. It can be used for retail type purposes. Basically anything that's what we determine is equivalent to the current business, which is the glass repair, which would be allowed in a C2 district. There might be any number of uses which could, the ordinance calls it a lateral move, so it could convert to another use. So,
Eric,
yes.
if I could clarify, one of our concerns is that there's this gap between what would be zoned commercial and what would be zoned residential left. If the applicant were to come back with a rezoning of those parcels, 2 parcels to the north and extend the whole C1 district down, I think we would probably have a little bit, subject to, review by the neighborhood. That would be probably a more appropriate consideration in our opinion. But to just rezone a property speculative, we don't have any uses identified for future use. There's a lot of uses that could go into the property under that zoning. Quite honestly, long-term, if the 3 properties were redeveloped together for a commercial use and we knew what that use was going to be, it might be a more appropriate consideration. But as currently presented, just rezoning that single lot and the uses just being fairly broad, we had concerns about doing that and the consistency with their neighborhood plan.
Robert, do you understand what's going on here? What the problem is?
It's commercial. You're saying that because
You've got 2 residential properties between commercial and yours. I mean, it's up to you, but, the potential is that you could continue this or withdraw it. I'm just asking, before we get through it, get into this.
well, I want to continue it, I guess. I don't understand why it's a problem.
Okay, you want to continue it?
Change the date.
That'll give you a chance at least to talk to staff and figure out where we're going with this, okay? Because you know what the recommendation is, right?
Yeah, to deny it based on
Right. So you want an opportunity to talk to staff before we move this forward?
Or do you just want us to vote on it?
You don't have to make a decision. We can make that for you. I'm just giving you an opportunity.
No, let's continue it.
Okay.
By continue, do you mean to go ahead with our?
Well, give them an opportunity. No, continue it.
Or to continue it to another day?
Continue to another day. I have a question about what the word continue.
All right. When I'm talking about continuance, I'm talking about setting it for a later date, so that gives you an opportunity to talk to staff about their concerns.
How soon can when can I bring it up again?
You can bring it up our next meeting if you think that's adequate time in which to talk to staff about their recommendations.
2 weeks.
Be 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It's more than 2.
Well, a little bit, but it's 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
September
5th.
5th.
Can I just offer some help?
Please.
You can offer all the help. I probably need it.
I think without him talking to those 2 residential owners,
Gills?
Yeah,
That's
it's his.
That's his property.
He owns them all.
Yeah, that's what it's.
Okay, so we need to direct him that we're not probably going to say yes to this unless all of those are included in the zoning.
That's what Mike just said.
You're being presumptuous.
And a use.
You could make that recommendation, but you haven't.
It
haven't had
is,
a hearing
but
yet. I was just clarifying Eric's point about it not being consistent with the comp plan.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and that's why I suggested to him that he have an opportunity to talk to staff about the recommendations. And I don't suspect
I
that
would
that's.
suggest maybe proceeding with the hearing and letting the conversation come out through their input and then debate whether or not to have a motion on that.
Or does it work?
Just to clarify though, to expand the zoning, if that's your ultimate choice at the end of this, it would require renotice because it's a larger area and those types of things. So, I'm sorry if I confused the matter, but I was trying to clarify what Eric's point was about the comp plan consistency with our recommendation.
May I ask staff a question?
Absolutely.
Does the term spot zoning apply here? Are we asking to put a one parcel zone?
It's already
We-
developed.
We have not specifically referenced spot zoning in our recommendation, but the plan, the neighborhood plan does address extension of commercial into their residential area. To just bring in one lot to the south and open that up to any number of uses with no current plan for any use, we have concern with that.
We generally have a lot of concern about that.
Yes.
I think it's on Cottage Grove, Mike, the little Woody's barbecue joint. Is that a spot zone or is that a grandfathered in something thing?
Been commercial.
Yeah, actually, it went to the Board of Adjustment, I think.
So what is it right now?
Been commercial there for 50 years.
It's zone residential, so.
It's a
They've had to go to
grandfather,
the-
it's a
they've had to go to
grandfather,
the Board for expansions.
it's a grandfather
Yeah.
commercial use, just like the existing glass warehouse or glass repair places in this building.
Only reason I bring that up, I know we're all very tired, is I think it's worth having some conversation. I think just the idea of it can't be disconnected by two properties isn't valid, in my opinion. In other words, this is an extremely cool, eclectic sort of part of the neighborhood here. And I don't know, I would welcome more conversation with the applicant and staff and you guys. And in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily have to be connected, so.
Are you done, Eric?
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to point out is that NPC and C1, there is a little area, not too far C1, but there is a greater area of NPC. So we in the pre-app process, encouraged if they are requesting rezoning to go with the NPC based on that configuration in that area, so.
Thank you. The applicant will please come forward. It's all right. We promise we won't hurt you.
All right. I'll be as brief as I can.
Well, go ahead and first of all, state your name.
Oh, my name is Robert Mulvihill. I'm the purchaser of this 1139 24th Street. I'm a landlord in the Drake area.
Okay, where do you live?
I live in Madison County.
Okay. You have an address?
Yeah, 3114 Cumming Road.
It's for her purposes.
Okay.
3114.
Cumming Road, Cumming.
Sign. You get a sign in.
Okay.
Oh, I signed it.
He's the applicant.
Yeah, we have his address.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm looking to purchase and fix up the property. You saw a picture earlier, but basically I just want to put a brick veneer on the front, put plate glass windows and an awning over it. I've advertised it for rent. I've had 20 inquiries roughly, and 2 of them have been for the workshop, and the rest of them have been just kind of various things that MPC would cover. MPC would cover everything, in my opinion, but workshop would only cover 2 of them. So my interest is to appeal to most number of businesses as I can. And just the fact that this building's for sale should tell you something. It's the window business is going out of business, basically. The workshop, I mean, just that type of repair shop isn't in demand, and it's not working, whereas I have lots of inquiries for other uses for it. I think the community would benefit. People could go to the building in that community instead of and where the building is instead of going to West Des Moines for something. If it's it's currently an R160 building, and it's definitely not an R160. It doesn't look like a house. It's just not. I mean, it's designed for commercial use, and if it's a workshop and it's vacant for 6 months, I can't really do much with it besides turn it into a house, and it'd be the ugliest house in the block. And what I want to do is by fixing it up, I feel like I would comply with the 2020 community character plan, because one section mentioned mixed use and how important it is to rebuild and restore buildings and to have mixed commercial and residential, and where the commercial kind of serves the residential area. And I was surprised the staff recommended denial, because I feel like this would fit perfectly with that. So that just kind of summarizes what I was.
What's your suggested use? What are you going to use it for?
Oh, depends on what business wants to rent it.
Well, I'm just saying, what are potential things that you could use it for, that you're visioning that to be used for?
Just various people that have applied. One was a grocery store.
And I don't want to go into details because I don't want to invade whatever but I'm looking for just proposals as to what it would be used for.
Just kind of retail uses, I feel like I can't answer without being specific. Like a bridal shop contacted me.
Okay.
A marketing company contacted me about using it as an office. Just those are the type of things.
Any questions?
If I could clarify, the NPC zoning district, though, does allow, what you've requested is NPC zoning, which does allow a multitude of uses beyond what you've described. Did you propose any limitations on uses as part of your application?
Just when I discussed at the Drake Neighborhood Association meeting, we had exclusions that I was totally fine with, like the alcohol and tobacco exclusion, no more than 40%, things like that. I was perfectly fine with.
Eric, were those in the application? Were those proposed?
They were just something suggested after you met with the neighbors.
So are you proposing tonight any limitations on the uses to address the neighborhood's input?
I'm sure I could add, the exclusions that we discussed.
I guess that letter.
Could you clarify what those exclusions from the meeting were? Does the neighborhood have a list of excluded uses you would prefer?
There
is a submittal.
We got a copy of this letter, Kathy. We're going to ask it to be received and filed.
Like taverns and cell phone towers, things like that, billboards.
Okay. And just to clarify, this letter, you had your neighborhood meeting last night, so our staff rec was written last Friday, and you had your neighborhood meeting last night,
Right.
and you're agreeing to the limitations on uses as in this letter you're submitting tonight, or the neighborhood will be submitting tonight?
Correct.
So that prohibits taverns and nightclubs, billiard parlor, game room, communication tower antenna, delayed deposit services, which is a payday lender, pawnbroker, gas station convenience store, off-premise advertising sign, or any business where gross revenues of tobacco and alcohol exceed 40% of sales. I guess what I'm getting at, this is new information we didn't have when we wrote our staff rec, but these are what you would agree to limitations on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tim?
Yeah, parking spaces for this building. What do you have and where are they?
It's on the west side of the building. There's 4 parking spaces.
Okay. I see 4 spots. Yeah. Oh, that is unique.
I can see why they want something done. Yeah, we need to do something with that building.
Has character.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He wants MPC, right?
But it looks really rough, but it's actually really structurally sound. It's built out of concrete block, and the person I had inspected it said the slab that it's built on is 2 feet thick, and the roof is only it's less than 5 years old, so it'll clean up nicely.
Any other questions? Jack?
I don't have questions, I'm sorry.
I watched your eyes roll when I leaned forward.
I wasn't, my eyes were rolling
Yours.
as a result of what you were doing. I'm just,
Busted.
I know we're into a little bit of spontaneity now with the lateness of the hour, but I don't think the applicant's decisions ought to be spontaneous. I think they ought to be well thought out, and it does sound as if additional information is available to city planning staff not previously available, and that maybe some accommodation can be made. I don't think we ought to be rushing in here and trying to formulate some motion and shove it down somebody's throat tonight. I think they ought to step back and think about, get it organized, bring it back in a couple weeks and see what we do.
that was certainly my thought earlier.
Yeah,
So,
well, I don't know why we got off track.
Ted.
I can forgive the applicant for being ignorant of the process, and that's fine, but this happened out of order. The neighborhood meeting should have happened before this, and I bet you that everybody here wants to support you and what you want to do, removing that from the neighborhood, but I completely agree with Jack. I think that you ought to ask us to continue this so that you have a chance to get a formal request from the staff that supports more of what you want versus trying to come up with something here without the benefit of the staff, essentially. And you're going to lose 2 weeks on it, but you're going to understand a lot better what you just agreed to.
So, I'm going to ask you that question I asked you earlier. Would you like to have a 2-week continuance so you can talk to staff?
Yes, I would.
All right. And if you need additional time, we can certainly offer that to you, and staff will work with you. They're not here to try and say no to you. They're here to try and make it work for you. You understand?
Upon the applicant's request, I will move that the matter be continued.
All right. Any discussion? Till the next meeting, which is September 5th? September 5th.
Mr. Chair, is there some way on the agenda at that time we could put Mr. Mulvihill somewhere closer to the beginning of the agenda rather than at the 9:30 tail
Yeah, we
end?
can put him on consent if we get it taken care of with staff.
Yeah, all up to you, Mike.
Okay, that having been said, is any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation, Kathy. All right, thank you.
And then there were 7.
Yeah.
Oh, we have,
No, that was
One more.
oh, 10 was continued to September 5th.
Give number 8.
8.
Oh, we still have 8?
Yeah,
Oh, we do have 8, okay.
Jackie's been, I don't.
Taking up number 8, request from Quest Development and Construction and Lamont Companies, represented by Kevin Weisbeck, to rezone property at 205 Southwest 11th Street. Once again, that'll break down into,
I think I can provide a very quick summary of this application. You had a PUD in front of you for 2 hotels previously. One of those was a Holiday Inn Express. They're now asking for additional rooms, a total of 102 rooms, so it's a larger building than was originally proposed. And I've also expanded the boundary of the planned unit development to allow signage to be placed out on MLK for the development. You received a staff recommendation last Friday. We do have one change to that recommendation. The applicant did try to address our concerns about signage. They did not satisfy staff's concerns. And so we do have a revised staff condition. I believe it's condition number 6 in the staff report. And that is to require an overall signage plan to be submitted for review by staff, recommendation by the Planning Commission, and approval by the council. No non-building mounted signage would be permitted or constructed until the overall sign plan for Grace Lake Office Park is approved. We'd asked previously for an overall sign plan. We think it's critical to have an overall plan that has an emphasis, in my opinion, a hierarchy of signage, where the predominant sign or the most important sign is one that says Gray Lake Office Park. And then there's a lesser hierarchy that's more of a directory type sign of tenants in that park, and then individual signage for individual tenants, monument signage. Since I know there were concerns about signage at the last meeting, I think it's imperative that it has to come back for review by staff, recommendation by the commission, and approval by the council, rather than just making it an administrative review. So in summary is our recommendation, and
Is the applicant present? Are you the applicant? Are you all right with that?
Good evening, Jackie Nicholas, Sherman Associates, 233 Park Avenue, South Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are joint venture with Quest Construction and Development of this site. Yes, I do have a couple other comments. As far as number 6 goes, we are in perfect agreement with that, but I do have a couple other comments on the staff recommendations, unless, Eric, do you
No,
have?
this is your time. Go ahead.
Okay. I've worked through these with Kevin Weisbeck with Quest Construction and our team at Sherman Associates, and we are fine with the staff recommendations, except I would say on number 7, staff has asked to shift the trash collection container enclosure to the east. I would like to add the language and/or add additional landscape screening. And the reason for that is because there are some maneuvering issues with trash collection, and there's also flow of traffic issues with the hotel. And we understand the objective is to not make that trash enclosure as visible from Southwest 11th, but at the same time, we don't want to create any traffic problems or any collection problems for the trash collectors. We felt it's kind of tucked away, though you could see it from Southwest 11th where we had it sited. Other than that, like I said, the other ones we are in agreement with, and we will turn our attention to the signage issue. We've talked about that with staff for the last 18 months, if not longer. I don't know.
So you're in agreement with that then?
Yes, yes.
As it stands.
What's that?
The signage.
Eric, do you have anything else?
I didn't have anything at all.
All right. my question is, are we okay?
yes.
I think so, Mike.
With her recommendation as well on the trash place.
Yeah, and Mike's been more involved in this.
Oh,
so he probably.
So we should ask Mike then.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mike.
We're fine with the revised wording for item 7.
All right. Do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none. And anybody here to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none. You don't have any rebuttal for your own good discussion. Tim.
Tim.
Move it? All right. And I think we got to break it down. I think we got to break it down to A and then B and C, right? Yes, we do.
Does it have her requested revision to?
As amended.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jack, you have something?
As amended being the landscape, okay.
The
fine.
signage and the trash collection.
The language of the end.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and take up A, its conformance, right?
Yes.
All right. A, staff's recommendation is it's in conformance. All right. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Okay. And then B and C. Have a motion?
Move.
Tim? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation again. Passes. Thank you. Mike, briefly.
No lunch with the city manager tomorrow. He's out of the office.
Okay.
So that's it. Thank you.
All right. Arno, anything? All right. We're adjourned.